Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of the Township of Puslinch on November 24th, 2021. And I will start with roll call. Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Balmer.
Present.
Councillor Goyda.
Present.
Councillor Spools.
Present.
Thank you. And this will commence our moment of reflection. Okay, that concludes our moment of reflection. Ms. Whitefox, could you read the resolution for confirmation of the agenda, please?
The council approves the November 24th, 2021 agenda as circulated, and that council approves the addition to the agenda as follows. Consent item 6.1.5, questions received from council seeking additional information and the corresponding responses provided by staff regarding the November 24th, 2021 council agenda items.
Can we get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spools, seconded by Councillor Goyda. All in favor, Councillor Bailey,
Yep, in favor.
Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goyda,
In favor.
Councillor Spools.
In favor.
All right. Any declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Oh, Councillor Spools.
Yes, item 10.3, Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee municipal member nomination. Report deals with my continued membership in the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee. Any decision made by council will affect me pecuniarily.
I meant to ask you ahead of time, are you even willing to stand, or are you being voluntold?
No, they'd asked me and I said, sure.
Okay, that wasn't clear. Just
No, they have to go through the process, ask each of the municipalities that I represent.
excellent. Well, all right. Any other disclosure of pecuniary interests? None. Consent agenda, Ms. Whitefox.
That the consent agenda items listed for the November 24th, 2021 council meeting be received for information.
Mover for that, please. Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Spoolis. Any items you want removed? Councillor Bailey.
None for me.
Thank you. Councillor Balmer.
No, thank you.
Councillor Goyda.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Spoolis.
Good, thank you.
All right. All in favor. Councillor Bailey.
Favor.
Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
And Councillor Spoolis.
In favor.
Delegations. Public meetings. Ms. Whitefox, do I have to read each of the applications in their entirety? Or what? Maybe I'll have you do it.
I can certainly read it for you, or you can just, the bolded part there just gives a general idea of the application, and then just the date, whichever you prefer, Mr. Chair.
All right, I'll just do it. So we have a public information meeting happening tonight at 7 p.m. We've had discussions about other opportunities for people to join, did we not? Not just Zoom. Does that ring a bell? Anyhow. And it's a zoning bylaw application D14/STU John Stubbs and Mary Lake. And we have zoning bylaw application D14/XUE James and Wanda Exurb. And again, that's starting at 7 p.m. Any further information I need to provide, Ms. Whitefox?
And then there's just the following for December 7th, 2021, and that's just the Public Information Center regarding the home industry provisions.
And you just did that. Perfect. Sorry, I need to turn the page. That's my mistake. Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I have a question regarding the Public Information Center on December the 7th. I'd like to understand the process. As you know, the PDAC meeting involves a committee of adjustment and then gets into the actual PDAC meeting whereby there's severance applications. I was wondering what the process is. Will this start this particular public information center be presented by county, the information, and then will it start at 7, sort of not have people wait around for the completion of the Committee of Adjustment and the other matters at the PDAC meeting?
So, Mr. Chair, I can help with that explanation. As of right now, I don't believe we have any application scheduled for the December meeting. So the likelihood that this would start at 7 is fairly good, and it would be included under other business under the PDAC agenda. The idea was just that the community is relatively familiar with meeting on these types of items at this time with this committee. So staff in the county felt that this would be a good time to hold this information center under other business under the PDAC agenda, with the county providing a presentation at that time, and also providing additional information of where the community can engage and get involved in this process through online, as well through telephone correspondence with the county. They can set up a time to schedule a discussion with the county planners if they have any further information. So we're hoping that we can get some feedback from the committee during this meeting, at the same time from the public.
Okay, so expecting public to ask questions at the meeting, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. On to reports. And the first one is Ms. Hassan. Let me get it up on my other screen. Report 9.2.1. Ms. Hassan.
Good morning, Council. This is just a regular report as it relates to cancellation, reduction, or refund of taxes through sections 357, 358, and the proposed adjustments are included as Schedule A to the report.
Thank you. Ms. White Fox, sorry, I should have maybe had you read the resolution first, please.
I report FIN 2021-038 regarding the cancellation, reduction, or refund of taxes through sections 357, 358 be received, and that council authorizes the treasurer through sections 357, 358 of the Municipal Act to process the cancellation, reduction, or refund of property tax for certain properties in the amount of $1,324 for the years 2019 and 2021 as outlined in Schedule A.
Thank you. Mover for that, please. Councilor Spoulos, seconded by Councilor Goida. Questions? Councilor Bailey,
Questions?
in favor?
Yep, in favor.
Right. Councilor Balmer,
No questions, thank you. And yes, I'm in favor.
right. Councilor Goida,
No questions, and I'm in favor.
Councilor Spoulos.
No questions, and I'm in favor.
Thank you. Ms. White Fox, you read the resolution for 9.2.2, please.
I report FIN 2021-037 regarding the third quarter financial report for 2021 be received for information.
Mover for that one, please. Councilor Balmer,
Yes, also move.
second, please. Councilor Goida.
Sure.
All right. Questions or in favor? Councilor Bailey.
No, I don't think I have any questions. Thank you. In
Okay.
favor.
Okay. Councilor Balmer.
No questions, thank you. And I'm in favor.
Excellent. Councilor Goida
No questions, and I'm in favor.
and Councilor Spoulos.
No questions, and in favor.
All right. We're going to try and give your arm a rest today. We're going to work the room a little bit.
No problem, Mr. Mayor.
Again, this one is Ms. Hassan. We have a resolution for this one, please, Ms. White Fox.
I report FIN 2021-040 regarding community improvement plan execution of financial assistance agreement with 2767374 Ontario Inc. be received, and that council gives 3 readings to bylaw number 2021-061, being a bylaw authorizing the entering into a financial assistance agreement with 2767374 Ontario Inc. under the Township of Plestinch Community Improvement Plan.
Thank you. Mover, Councilor Balmer.
Yes,
Second, Councilor Bailey. Any questions, Councilor Bailey? Comments?
Nope. Nope. No, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Balmer.
no, thank you. I'm support. And do you want me in favor at this time too?
I didn't this time because I thought there might be a little bit of
Okay.
discussion, so I was just not doing it. Councilor Goida.
Okay.
I have no questions.
Very good. Councilor Spoulos.
I'm good, thank you.
I'm just glad to see a local business getting this application in and being approved for some improvements in one of our core areas. All right, in favor, Counselor Bailey,
Favor.
Counselor Bowmer,
In favor.
Counselor Goida,
In favor.
Counselor Spools.
In favor.
Sorry, Counselor Goida, when you say you don't have comments and I say good, I don't mean that
No,
I don't have comments from you.
I knew what you meant. It's okay.
I could get a phone call demanding an apology, so I've got to make sure that it's received properly. All right, Ms. Hoy Fox, a resolution for 9.3.1.
The council receives report ADM 2021-075 regarding the Side Road 10 North parking update for information.
Can I get a mover for that one? Counselor Spools. Oh, seconded by Counselor Goida. Any comments, Counselor Bailey?
Sorry, I'm fussing with my thing here. I just wanted to say I'm really happy to see the staff recommendation around the investigating parking at trailheads. I think it's down on page 2. I think when a road's, being scheduled for reconstruction, it's the ideal time to consider where some appropriate parking should or could be. So that's just my comment for that.
Yep. Counselor Bowmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I appreciate the fact that staff are starting to look at this at a township-wide perspective, and I think it's a good direction to go in, so that these issues can be addressed wherever they may occur, and they can be addressed as we're fixing the road. So I think staff has come up with a great recommendation. So thank you.
Counselor Goida?
I agree with the comments of Counselor Bailey and Counselor Ballmer. And I'm happy to hear that the solutions, particularly on Side Road 10 that have been implemented are working. And, I'm thankful to both staff and to council for working collaboratively on that and finding a solution that was a win for everyone. So it's good to see that.
Thank you. Counselor Spools?
Yeah, just a quick question. It's reiterated in the notes that our clerk passed out. What is the staff's proposal to provide additional parking at trailheads and investigation, and what's the sort of process we intend to use on that?
I can speak to that. As council is aware, with the road management plan that we are undertaking, they're developing a set of design criteria that when a road is determined to be in need of updating or a new design, there'll be a checklist that we go through at the start of the project. We'll bring it forward to council to say, what things would you like to see, what things should be considered, and one of them will be parking if there is a trailhead in that particular section of road. And if that's the item that council wants to pursue at that time, then we will look at a number of different options along the side of the road. We'll get in touch with the corresponding conservation authority to see what partnerships could take place and anything like that. And then once we have that information and determine what the potential costs might be, then the decision will be made by council as to should that be included in the final design of the project or not.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Counselor Bailey?
Favor.
Counselor Ballmer?
In favor.
Counselor Goida?
In favor.
Counselor Spools?
In favor.
Thank you. Ms. White Fox, 9.3.2, please, resolution.
Thank you. This resolution has been amended just slightly for the recommendation coming from staff based on the last operating budget meeting. So I'll just read out what staff have recommended. The council receives report ADM 2021-076 regarding the second draft of the advertisement, communication and media relations policy. And the council adopts the policy either as presented at amended. And that council directs staff to report back at a future meeting prior to the final 2022 budget approval with a draft provision to be added to the advertisement, communication and media relations policy regarding township external advertising.
I get a mover for that, Counselor Ballmer?
Yep, I'll move.
And seconded by Counselor Bailey. Comments, Counselor Bailey?
Yeah, I don't know how much detail we want to get into here. I wondered about adding senior men's baseball to the list of organizations. in section 4. Sorry, I'm not on the right
I think
page.
you're on
Anyway.
page 2 of 3. Yeah, section 4.
111, yeah. And I did have a question regarding adding in to the County of Wellington reports where the external content's shared. I wondered about road closures and construction. I didn't know if that was understood to be in there or if we need to specify.
So,
That.
Mr. Chair, sorry. Generally, we would share that information through our public notice section on the website. So if there are road closures, we do that right now. So we would just duplicate that through social media as well.
Great, great. And then it's on our page 120. I just had a question regarding the outdoor marquee. It says advertising is available for a minimum period of 1 week. And I just wondered if there was room in the policy to extend a week if needed, and if there's a process for that in place.
Yes, so a minimum. So there certainly, if an applicant would like longer, then that can be arranged just through the application process.
Okay, great. And then one other, oh, this is the same spot. So an external group to be added. If I can request that Wellington Safe Communities Committee be added.
Yes, Councillor Bailey, I believe we have on there the external committees of council. So I'm not sure if we've added it specifically or if it's understood under that section, but either way, we'll make sure that it's included.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff for their work on this again. Just one question regarding sharing this when this is adopted with the community groups that currently are making use of some of these opportunities, whether the marquee sign or rink board advertising. Can we perhaps share them, let them know about this new policy, and so they don't miss out on updating or renewing any permits or fees that they have to pay to maintain those whatever they have on rink boards or using the sign, all that kind of stuff? Is that possible?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Balmer, and staff will be reviewing our application forms. We'll be working with the services team to do that. And so we'll make sure to reach out to those groups and make them aware of the policy as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Councillor Goyda?
Thank you. I don't really have anything to add. I think that this is really well done, and I'm sure that there's a bit of a learning curve that will take place, especially in regards to the social media, but I do think that this will be really beneficial to reach a lot more of our residents. So I'm excited to get this going.
Councillor Spools?
Yes, I was wondering if we could add Cushing's High Speed to the list of community-based groups to follow. We have about 416 members on the Facebook page, and they're very active in terms of discussing internet issues. And there's a question. Will training be provided to council and committee members and staff on this?
Yes, certainly we'll do that. We're preparing a user's guide to accompany the policy as well. So that will be distributed to committees, council staff, and any of our user groups.
Great, thank you.
Any question for staff? In the section where examples of posts to be shared, reposts include, we don't have Wellington County OPP listed. Did I miss it, or has it just been a little bit of an oversight?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we can go back and double check that. I know that we've included them in one of the sections. We'll make sure that's consistent throughout the policy before this is approved with all the user groups that were mentioned today by council.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I believe I had a mover and a seconder for that, correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So all in favor, Councillor Bailey? I saw you move your mouth, but I didn't hear you. Councillor
Favor.
Balmer? Councillor Ballmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Spoulos.
In favor.
All right, report 9.4.1. Have that resolution read, please.
The report BLDG 2021-004 with respect to the Building Department quarterly update for July to September 2021 be received for information.
Get a mover for that, please. Councillor Goida,
Yes.
seconded by Councillor Spoulos. I don't see Andrew here. Let's just see if there's any questions and then staff can jump in. Any questions, Councillor Bailey?
No, none for me.
In favor?
In favor.
Councillor Ballmer?
No questions, thank you, and I'm in favor.
Okay. Councillor Goida?
No questions and in favor.
And Councillor Spoulos.
No questions, in favor.
Excellent. Our first presentation is White Fox.
Yes, I believe we have Mr. Hassan Bassat here, as well as Ms. Marnie Piggott, so I'll just move them both over.
Welcome,
Good morning.
both of you.
Thank you, Mayor Sealy, members of council. With me is Marnie Piggott, our Director of Finance. It's good to be here this morning. With your indulgence, will share my screen and we can get started. Okay, I'm assuming you can see this clearly. So I will take you through our 2022 budget, and then we'll have some time for questions if there are any. We'll start by maybe where CH has been this year in terms of completing our new strategic plan. As some of you may recall, we came out with our first strategic plan in quite a few years, called Metamorphosis, about 4 or 5 years ago. And a lot of the emphasis of that plan was really looking at the basics of the Conservation Authority, the finances, the service delivery, the customer focus, the programs and their value. And, you know, 4 years of working through that plan quite successfully, we decided to work on our next plan. We've called it Momentum. I think that's an apt name. I think we as an organization have worked really hard over the last 4 or 5 years at all levels, including the board, in ensuring that we've got the basic fundamentals of the organization, you know, in the right place. And we feel that there's an opportunity now to really build on that and grow from there while focusing on our core areas of responsibility. So the CH board drove and then eventually approved our new strategic plan. I won't go through all of the details, but you can see across the top, we have our 4 priority areas. And then along the bottom, we have our 3 enabling areas, which we feel are as critical as anything else in helping us achieve our priorities. The plan is on our website if you would like to take a look at it. So in terms of some of the external drivers for us for the upcoming year, some of these are unchanged. Population growth continues to be one of the big drivers, you know, keeping in mind that most of our watershed or area of jurisdiction is Halton region. And as you all know, it's going through a lot of growth. And even the areas we have in Hamilton and Peel to the east and the west are high growth areas of those municipalities, certainly with the Waterdown area in Hamilton, and the 9th line area in Peel. So we'll continue to ensure that we can offer the service levels to meet the needs, the growing needs for all of those business areas. Changing technology is a big part of you know, not just in terms of finding efficiencies, but actually looking at data differently, managing our assets differently, delivering customer service differently. Climate change continues to be an area that we are, over the next 3 or 4 years, going to focus in on a little bit more, and look at how all our programs are aligned to offer value to our municipalities when it comes to climate change. The rate of inflation, you're all familiar with that. We're hoping that it does level off, but that's a driver. Aging infrastructure, it's not a crisis. It's something that continues to drive the focus of our budgets and our efforts, and we'll continue to do that. And then, of course, the pandemic, we're all hoping most of the disruption is behind us, but it still continues to have an impact. It's had, other than just moving forward, seeing how it plays out and how things go, the financial impact, the strong financial impact the pandemic has had over the last 18 months or so, will continue to have an effect as we go forward as well for us. So that continues to be something that we're keeping an eye on for next year. In terms of some of our priorities, if I roll them up into broader areas, it's infrastructure improvement. It's actually expansion of our conservation areas. The CA Act, there's still work continuing on the regulations. The phase 1 regulations were released a few months ago, and the phase 2 regulations, these are the ones that deal with budgets and levy and voting mechanisms around those pieces. And we expect them to be released in the coming weeks, if not a month or so. As some of you may know, the minister formed a Conservation Authorities Ministerial Working Group to provide advice on those regulations, which I was asked to chair. So that's been a pleasure to work in that space and actually have the ability to provide input into how those regulations may look. Digital transformation, as I mentioned, is going to be key for us. Floodplain mapping, we've embarked with funding available, with lots of things need to align. Floodplain mapping is not it can be a costly endeavor when you're looking at the entire watershed. So we launched a multi-year plan to update all our floodplain mapping about 2 years ago, and we're well within, we're working really well within that plan, and I'll show you some details later on. And then, as I mentioned, our climate change strategy is a key priority for us. As you may all know, I really like to lead with the numbers. I think there needs to be absolute clarity on what they are, and then talk about what the value of those programs will be. So I'll start there again. Our budget for next year is just a shade over $40 million. As I mentioned on the first 2 slides, some of the priorities are listed under what that budget will support. The municipal increase is 3.5%. Well, maybe I'll mention it when I get to the apportionment slide, how things work there. I'd like to point out that tax supported, or the municipal tax levy portion of our budget, is actually less than 27% of our overall budget, which continues to be one of the lowest percentages of any conservation authority, and certainly for a large conservation authority. So when we're talking about a 3.5% increase, it's a 3.5% increase on 27% of the overall $40 million budget. And we'll continue to invest in our state of good repair levy, our asset management plan, in other words. So looking at this, it gives you a breakdown between capital and operating. So off that $40.2 million, $32 million is operating, and $6.7 million is capital. Again, if you look at that middle column and you focus on the capital, 6.7 million investment in capital projects is actually quite a good leverage of 262,000 from the tax base to invest in these projects. So again, that percentage, that formula that CH tries to maintain between municipally funded and other sources is quite strong when it comes to capital as well. So as I mentioned, if you look at the sources of our revenue, you'll see the program revenue continues to be quite a big proportion of how we operate. And, and as I mentioned earlier, some of the disruption caused by the pandemic financially, when you're an organization such as ours, which has a huge dependency on self-generated revenues, then then you can get hit pretty hard when those revenues dry up, and they did for us. The most recent thing that we've spent the entire year mitigating, and have managed to do so quite well right towards the end of this year, was the loss in revenue from our ski operations of nearly $4 million deficit, and we've made that up over the course of the year through emphasis in other areas to generate revenues, increase visitation to our parks, and just operational efficiencies and cost control. So I feel we'll end this year in a healthy financial position, but then of course, fingers crossed that there are no further disruptions, and we can actually have, for the first time in over 2 years, a good ski season, which we're all looking forward to. So as I mentioned earlier, I know you're all familiar with this, having multiple conservation authorities within the county. Our apportionment shapes up this way, where Halton Region is about 88% of our municipal levy. And so when we try and build our budgets, looking at all the priorities, we really try and stay within the guidelines that are given to us by our municipal partners. Now, the guidelines sometimes vary. Different municipalities will give us different ones, but the one that we try and follow, of course, is Halton Region, given that they are 88% of that budget. And their guideline for us this year was 3.7%, and we're under that. And this is the 4th or 5th year that we've been at or under municipal guidelines. And as you'll recall, I think with Puslinch last year, our budget actually went down. There was a reduction, and it's gone up by 3.3% this year, for a total of $23,000, a little bit over $23,000. And that's not the increase, that's the total budget. So percentages are great, but actual dollar numbers, I think, are important as well. So what is the 3.5% increase? It's $364,000 on a $40 million budget. And it is driven primarily by increases related to staffing and those costs, which are, they're not really in our control. So compensation, inflationary increases, which we've offset quite a bit through operating efficiencies, looking at staffing levels, things like that. A little bit of increase in capital funding, and the state of good repair levy increase, which is according to the financing strategy that we worked out, the long-term strategy to get our asset management plan reserves fully funded. This slide, I won't go through it all, but it gives you a bit of an indication of where our capital expenditures are. And the reason I put it up is so you can see that, those priority areas that I had in the first few slides are really reflected even in terms of how we're investing in the capital for all of those areas. So you'll see projects that relate to dams, public safety, forecasting and warning systems, floodplain mapping, emerald ash borer impacts, removing trees that are hazardous or infected, the digital transformation in terms of our IT infrastructure, document digitization, all of that modernization. And then some facilities, and then at the bottom, quite a significant investment in our conservation areas, trails, parks, and other related expenditures there. Some of the budget pressures: increased legal expenses, staffing to meet the needs of our growing community. We have a chargeback, which is this year has been quite challenging. And what I mean by chargeback is, when we say we don't fund park operations or park capital through municipal levy, we really mean that. So even overhead expenses on the corporate side, such as HR, IT, finance, the proportion that those positions spend on supporting our parks are actually charged back to the park. So those corporate overheads are not being funded by tax levy as well. And this year was about $1.2 million on the park side. And that's always the risk where if your revenues start to suffer on the park side, then you still need to find that money to support those corporate expenditures, because we still need those positions to support all the other project areas or program areas. Just a quick slide to show you our forecast up to 2025, and I think it's a good forecast. We can always play within 1.5%. We've always been able to do that. In fact, we've been able to do more than that if asked by our municipal partners. But I think this is a good forecast. It's not like we've been managing to come in at what our municipalities have asked us to consider, but then pushing things off into the future where we're projecting 10, 12, 15% increases. That's not the case. And this again goes back to the fact that we've worked really hard over the last 4 or 5 years to ensure that there's a decent feathering of our long-term financial sustainability, and you're not going to see big spikes unless it's something that's completely an unknown at this point. But we hope that's not the case. The pandemic is a big enough unknown for everybody to deal with for the next few years, I would hope. So those are the numbers. And in terms of the programs that they will fund and the impacts of those programs, I'll run through a few slides. And this is also a little bit of an accountability piece for me, because these are programs that you did support last year. And so I want to talk quickly about how we delivered value for that financial contribution, and in other areas as well. We've had really record visitation to our parks, and I know the number there's 1.3, it'll be closer to 1.5 million by the end of this year. So that's almost a 50% increase in park visitation, and the 50% increase over 1 million. It's a big number. It's something that means you have to really look at your resources, your capacity, your staffing, your service levels, and health and safety, risk management, all of those things. It's not an extra dozen people coming to the parks. And also, we've been drawing from a really large area over the past few years as more and more people, look for opportunities, across the GTA to come out and engage and do different things with their families while feeling safe, in outdoor settings. So we've been able to do that. We've been really successful in our grant writing, over $3 million in grant funding. We opened our 8th park earlier this fall. It's called Area 8 because it's our 8th park, and we don't yet have a name for it. We're working with our Indigenous communities to see how we can not just name that park so it reflects that aspect, but also work with them on programming and storytelling and other opportunities at that site. So but it's been really well received by the community, and a lot of work's gone into opening it. In fact, over 20 years of restoration has gone into opening Area 8, because it used to be a limestone quarry when CH inherited the property or was given the property about 20 years or so ago. A few other programs that I just want to highlight. You see some of the images, and you see the list there, and I know you have the presentation in your packages, so I won't go through all of them, but we've got a real focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we've really doubled down on it over the last year or so, just because we don't want to be an organization that is aware of it but is entirely reactive, and actually like to be proactive in that space. And so we're working hard there. Events such as Pride in Nature tree planting, our Green Space Newcomer Youth Climate Forum is just fantastic, and has been really well received. New Canadian ski and snowboard program in partnership, or funded or supported partially by Canadian Tire, and our library Pass It On program. Our passes are in the local libraries as the libraries request them, and are in fact quite popular. It's quite a waiting list to get those passes, but it's another way of trying to ensure that we offer accessibility in various ways. And as I mentioned, in terms of the draw to our parks, those 1.5 million visitors, about half of them are coming from Halton region, and about half of them are coming from in and around the GTA. Our education programs, normally, we would host close to 70,000 students at our parks in any given year. So these are field trips, if you will, that kids take. We draw from a number of school boards, but we also work with other organizations that aren't affiliated with school boards. So all kinds of models of schooling can be welcome to our parks. Now, we couldn't do those in-person ones, obviously, so we switched to virtual programming. We created a lot of virtual programs. You see the list on the right-hand side, and I think we've had some success in offering something different as all the kids were learning, in virtual classrooms, and that's an offering that I think we'll continue to keep, because again, it adds another avenue to access some of this programming. So we'll likely keep it in the mix. Turning my focus to climate change a little bit. So CH, like many conservation authorities, we've always offered programs and services and studied both the effects and possible adaptation strategies for climate change. But what we're trying to do at CH is really bring it under one cohesive umbrella, so that we can actually sit down with our municipal partners and say, okay, what are the municipalities focusing on? What are your mitigation focuses? Here's what CH does. Do you have data gaps that we can help fill? Do you have gaps on analysis that we can help fill? As a conservation authority, if we're collecting data or monitoring the environment in one area, but a municipality feels they've got a bit of a blind spot in terms of water quality in a particular area, or biodiversity, or any sort of terrestrial or aquatic monitoring, then I think that gives us an opportunity to say, well, maybe the Conservation Authority can help fill that gap. And so that we work collectively towards all the solutions that are required for climate change. And for us, adaptation is going to be the big space. So what does that break down into? These are kind of 4 broad pillars. If we put them in plain English, so carbon storage. What is the estimated storage of our forests, wetlands, grasslands, managed areas, and how can that be improved? What are some of the forestry projects that we undertake on private and public lands? What is their value in this space, and how can we be more strategic? Then you look at resilience, all about adaptation. So improving water quality through monitoring and analysis, supporting flood resilience and erosion control, the restoration of wetlands, and just general protection and enhancing of biodiversity, species at risk, monitoring, all of those things. Then you've got protection of life and property, and that deals with all our flood forecasting and operations, as well as the very core of the CA regulations, right? Ensuring that development is occurring in areas that within the CA Act that it should be occurring in. And then lastly, and equally important to all of the others, is community awareness, the stewardship programs, the education programs, and any other engagement we can offer. Those are sort of the higher level umbrellas. And so what are some of the programs that happened in those areas? What are the outcomes? We restored over 16,500 square meters of wetlands this past in the current year. We planted 67,000 trees. We removed a lot of invasive trees, 235 ecological sites monitored. That's quite an extensive monitoring network if you really think about it. We restored close to 40 hectares of land, 2 kilometers of stream bank. And within Halton, we had about 63 restoration projects. And it's just another way to give you a sense of, we do some very, very big things that are multi-million-dollar, multi-year, but we also really try and have a broad spread. So we are doing programs that are across the watershed at different levels. And the reason we emphasize that kind of that kind of variability in our restoration programs is because it's that importance of engaging the public. So if you're only doing big stuff with contractors, are you really creating opportunities for the residents of the watershed to come out and do something? And that's where we do a lot of smaller projects, weekend things, long weekend things, evening things, things with scouts and with other Girl Guides groups and local environmental clubs, just everything we can to partner and leverage our reach collectively within the community. In terms of our planning and permitting role, just a collage of pictures, but I think, if you just scan it, it sort of gives you an idea of this, again, the scale. It's everything from, a resident requiring a permit on their property to build a deck or extend a patio or reconstruct their home, to major subdivisions, major infrastructure projects at a municipal level, sometimes at a provincial level. This slide will be familiar to you. I present it every year. This is how we track our service standards. The target slide that you see are not targets that have been imposed on us. They go well beyond anything that we find in any documents over the last 4 or 5 years. We picked these as our stretch targets, and we monitor results quarterly, and they're all reflected in the last column. And then just lastly, as I mentioned, floodplain mapping. This is sort of a Gantt chart, if you will, that shows you how we're proceeding with our floodplain mapping. The image on the bottom left is that of our watershed, and it shows you some of the big sub watersheds that we're working on. We did the Grindstone Creek watershed in phase 1, and we're now working on some of the urban creeks in East Burlington, as well as the east end of our watershed. And just that wasn't the last slide. This one is. We do have a foundation that helps support a lot of our events. We recently held a fundraiser for Area 8 at Area 8, which used to be known as the Milton Limestone Quarry. And it was quite successful. We brought in over $220,000 in revenue, but more importantly, we created the space for 200 supporters of green space and parks and community to gather and talk about the importance of continuing to provide accessible green space to our growing communities. And so I just wanted to mention that. And that's it for my presentation. If you'd like, Your Worship, I can stop sharing or leave it on for questions. I'll stop
Please
sharing.
stop sharing. Thank you. Easier for me to see, Council. There we go. Thank you for your presentation, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's always so great to see all the work that's happening. I really like the momentum focus. And one thing you briefly touched on, sorry, my computer has timed out now. I was really happy to see in the Conservation Authority's the regulations that was released. I was really happy to see that maintaining recreation programs are still on there. And you can see how it's reflected in the area budget that you've created there. So I don't have any questions for you. I want to thank you for the library passes. I know we've got residents that were eagerly waiting for them, and they've been using them, and that's really appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome back, Mr. Bassett. I was glad that you take the time. Even if we're a small tail, we're still part of the dog, and I appreciate the attention you give us and the details you provide. You mentioned something interesting about partnerships with community groups and involving the community in activities. I had the opportunity last January, our community got involved with the Trees for Tots, and we had 2 transport trailers. I think we put about 500 trees into transport trailers for Conservation Halton to use as for stream restoration. And I just wondered, I'm also aware there's places in the township that are often doing thinning of plantations that generate an enormous amount of limbs and branches and things. Is there a greater demand than what you can get from Trees for Tots for those sorts of things to build bundles for stream restoration that perhaps we can connect landowners that are thinning bushes to provide more of those resources for you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so the Christmas trees that you got involved with last year went to narrowing some of the stream banks. I think it was in the Bronte Creek watershed. And in prior years, we've actually used them in Area 8 because there's a lake to create shoals for fish. I know that we are also doing extensive amounts of plantation thinning and removal of ash trees, and I know we don't require any more.
Good.
Because and the general ecological guidance we have from our team is to leave those in brush piles, in the area that you remove them from, where possible, and dispose of the rest. So I don't think we will need any of those tree limbs, but we likely will do the Christmas tree donation again, and we'll keep you. We'll make sure we reach out to you and inform council when we're doing that, in case you'd like to promote that within the Puslynch community.
Super, thanks. And the last thing, Councillor Bailey touched on it about when the province released the regulations. I noted that the passive recreation properties were identified still as core services, and I just wanted to confirm. Well, first of all, thank you as part of your work on that committee, that if you had anything to do with that language or those properties making it through. But I just wanted two things related to that, is confirm that extends beyond places like maybe Burns Lake to include properties like the McLean Tract or McCroden Tract would still be considered as part of those passive recreation sites.
Yes, so Councillor, I think there's two things I'd like to mention. One, as a result of the Phase 1 regulations, as a result of the changes to the CA Act, there has been absolutely no restrictions put on what a CA does. And I think that was part of the early concern, was the province going to restrict the ability for conservation authorities to offer programs? So I'm happy to say that it's been a year of hard work, but not a single program is going to be removed from the mandate of the Conservation Authority. What the province has done, and I don't think that this is a bad thing, is they've said, we're going to give you some broad categories. So they're numbered: Category 1, Category 2, and Category 3. And the idea behind that is that anything that the province has over the years delegated down to the conservation authorities, such as the regulations, the source water protection program, the hazard related functions around flood forecasting. So in other words, areas of provincial legislation and interest, they've put in Category 1. Category 2 are programs that a municipality asks the CA to deliver on its behalf. And Category 3 are programs that a CA brings to the municipality to say, we think we should offer these because they offer benefits broadly, in terms of the watershed. And so what the province did is they actually put passive recreation in Category 1. That means that doesn't mean that other forms of recreation are disallowed in any way. Nothing changes. We still operate a ski hill, but they've kind of said, passive recreations are something that a CA can levy its municipalities for, because that's Category 1. So in other words, Category 1 are programs that a municipality must pay a CA for if the CA puts it in that category. And passive rec is there. It is defined as basically non-programs, so things that are truly passive. So hiking, those types of things, activities, even camping, I think, things that don't, what the province doesn't want is to force municipalities to have to pay for the upkeep of big visitor centers, or if we're offering special programs that generate revenue. It really is meant for that trail system to be maintained and for it to be healthy and accessible. So that's there's a bit of a nuance there, but you're absolutely right. Any of the resource management tracts that a CA and their municipal partners wish to offer trail systems on are there. And then it's between the CA and the municipality as to how the funding for that will take place. There's certainly can be put in category 1, but as I've just demonstrated through our budget, up to now, CH has not put any of those operations related to passive or active rec on the municipal levy. There may be a need in the future if, let's say, if you get away from those big revenue generating parks, right, which allow us to offset the cost, and therefore we don't have to put it on the tax levy. But if you're opening up little tracts of land here and there, a 1 or 2 or 3 kilometer loop in a local community, if you do 1 or 2 of those, we can probably still continue to subsidize them from the revenue surplus that we generate at our parks. But as population grows, and if Conservation Hall has to open 5 or 6 of those tracts, then maybe we work with the local municipality to say, look, it's going to be difficult to put fee stations and all of that there. Can it just be, available there? And we think the minimum cost of just maintaining the trail, picking up the garbage, having trailhead signage and a few benches, maybe a washroom, a little gravel lot, is going to be $20,000 a year. Can we find a way to subsidize that between us? So those are the types of things that CH would look to do in the future. We're not really at this stage looking to reshift how we fund our parks just because it's been enabled in the regulations.
Thank you. That is, you've anticipated much of my second part of this. We're very fortunate here in Post Lunch. I think we've got probably about 1,200 acres of these types of tracts in our small municipality. 2 or 3 of them are owned by Conservation Halton, and we've started conversations about how to improve the safety for people who are using them, because as we've noticed, as you mentioned earlier, during the pandemic, more and more people were looking for these opportunities, and they're creating possible parking hazards when they're accessing the trailhead. And if we were looking to address your concerns regarding the cost of having a small parking spot or a bench or trail maintenance, as maybe at a time when we're upgrading the road in the area, what would be your timeline to start those discussions so that they could align with our timelines to have it completed? Are you looking at a year in advance, 2 years in advance for that kind of partnership process to bring a parking lot online at one of these places? Or is it 6 months? Just what kind of lead time would we need to give you to work through that?
I think a year would be reasonable to, from when we start talking to when it can potentially be, the service can be delivered, and maybe it's a little bit longer, depends on when we start that discussion with budget cycles and everything else. We've just started, and I received the first report last night, and it's actually quite eye-opening. We've actually started to look at using a little bit of technology to look at the usage on some of these tracts of land that are not parks, that we don't have official trails on, that we're not doing risk management from a passive rec standpoint, and the numbers are quite large. So some of the areas in the Waterdown Woods area where we don't have a park, we have a property that we own that we've never put a trail on, is being visited by close to 140,000 people a year. That's quite an active park, whether we call it that or not. So we've done that around 4 properties, and it would be good to actually partner maybe with Post Lynch as well, because you don't have to sit there all week and observe it. You can do little samples of, and then we have so much data on visitation in our parks that we can do a comparison and say, okay, this is apples for apples, and we can extrapolate it. If we're seeing 40 people on a Saturday afternoon here, we know that it generally means this many over the span of the year. So if we kind of invest a little bit of time in studying the usage, we can then come up with a proper solution in the right area, because we don't want to spread it too thin over 4 tracts either. Let's pick the best one and start with that, and then go from there.
Super. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your knowledge, your depth of knowledge right down to the ground, and it certainly makes your presentations interesting and informative. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goyda?
Thanks very much, and thanks for your presentation. They're always so well put together and informative. I only really have one question, which you've kind of touched on a little bit, but in regards to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the impacts of, you talked about having the ski hill closed and the impact on the revenues of that. Certainly, everyone has been affected by COVID-19, every business, every organization, every sector. And I'm curious to know, as we are now getting back to a sense of normal, reopening gradually to a somewhat sense of normal, some businesses, organizations, sectors are still seeing that the impact, they're still not back to pre-COVID sort of situation. And then there's others that are doing better than they ever have before. And it's funny, you talked about the Trees for Tots. I think Christmas tree farms are doing better than ever before. So I'm just curious in terms of park attendance and program revenues and things like that, as we're starting to reopen, where does the conservation, sort of fall in that spectrum? Or is it still down below where it was before COVID, or is it way surpassed that? Just getting a gauge of how things are going in terms of that getting back to normal.
Certainly, Councillor, I'll try. If you take the ski operation closure out of the equation, because that was a provincial order that said ski resorts are to be closed. So we closed that. If you take that out, and that was the big financial hit for CH, right? So to lose all of that revenue is very, very difficult for us to then make that gap up. But if you take that out of the equation, we've actually seen record attendance and record revenue in the other areas, the other 3 seasons, if you will, at our parks. And that's where the visitation has been so high. And we expect that to level off a little bit as other businesses open up and people have other opportunities to spend their time with their families, or their entertainment dollars, if you will, or their health budgets as gyms open up and other things. So we expect there to be a leveling off. We expect it to come down a little bit in terms of where we've been over the last few years. But I'd like to believe that one of the reasons we've been successful is we really have not compromised on public safety. So we've worked with hand in glove with our local public health units, be it the one in Halton, or if we're doing something at Mountsburg, it's the Hamilton Health Unit. And I think we've, providing that assurance to visitors to say we're really not checking boxes here, we're doing everything and then something to keep you safe. And that's going to be reflected in the upcoming ski season as well. Just last night, we shared our policy with all our customers that it's 12 and over mandatory vaccination for all visitors to the ski hill, as well as our staff, of course. And I think that, things like that really help restore confidence in as people start to open they're back up to going out and engaging with businesses and entertainment. And so for us, it's been, I think, that real hard-nosed emphasis on public safety has paid off, because it's inspired confidence and people have felt safe to come out. And so I would hope that that's certainly the case for all businesses in the coming year, in the coming months. I hope we have a good Christmas, shopping season and all of those things. And hopefully that inspires more confidence. I think everybody's looking at the next month to see, is there going to be big spikes in cases? Are we going to go to shutdowns again? Or can we actually get through this and then get back into normalcy? So I can tell you that for Glen Eden, even though nobody got value for money last year, none of our customers did, because we only were able to offer a third of the season. Now we did refunds and everything. So, we did all of that. It's not like they were out of pocket for a service they didn't receive, but still, when you wait all year to ski and you only get, a month to ski, you're not really getting value. So we were concerned to see how this year, would the people come back, because sometimes you just lose the customer forever because you've had a bad year. And we're happy to report that we've actually had record preseason sales for our ski passes, and the lessons programs sold out faster than they ever have. So if anything, maybe that restores some confidence in that, the muscle memory is still there for us to go out and do the things we did. But we'll wait and see how things go for us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Councillor Suppose?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bassett, for extensive presentation. I always admire your ability to reflect the costs and the issues facing you. A question with respect to the ask of us, and how does it relate to the CA Act regulation impact? In other words, you're asking something in order of 3.5% from us, and this act came into play. Had the act not come into play, would your request been the same or less? Or
so if the act, I should say, will come into play as of January the 1st, 2024. That's the transition timeline for conservation authorities and municipalities to implement it. If CH doesn't make, and this will be down to our board, of course, but as I mentioned, if we decide to stick with our model of not using municipal tax dollars to finance passive recreation, then there would have been no change to the levy that you're seeing today. But if we were to follow the letter right down to the details of the regs, then you would be seeing quite a significant increase in the levy coming to Puss Lynch. Some of that increase could be offset by Puss Lynch refusing to sign agreements for programs such as environmental monitoring or stewardship or forestry management, things that would fall under categories 2 or 3. But I think that I don't see Puss Lynch as being the community that says, well, we're not going to be a part of those programs when they're vital to everything. So, Councillor, it's tough to say. It could be give and take, but I think, Marnie and I have talked about this. When you look at that $40 million budget and you look at only 27% of it being tax supported, there's a big chunk of passive rec that we're not putting on the tax levy. And so if we were to do that, I think the budgets would go up quite a bit.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. What I heard when you halfway through was that you were going to be moving to or possibly moving to a situation where if there was an improvement in a local municipality, you would then maybe be looking at a levy increase for that specific municipality. However, I heard that we're not there yet. So my question for you is, we do have this Watson Road tract that does not have any parking. And I wonder if it's in the capacity of CH to at least look into moving the gate back and some minor improvements to facilitate some parking, because, well, first off, we just repaved Watson Road, so it's likely not going to have an improvement for 15 or 20 years, depending on the usage. So, and I do understand that we are, pretty small player in, your organization, but we still are there. We do contribute. So I'd appreciate it if you could at least take a look at it and maybe do that ahead of a reconstruction of Watson Road. One comment you made is that you were worried that people didn't have value in the ski pass last year, and because of the shortened season. I can tell you that we purchased the preseason passes for the past few years. I have 2 children, 10 and 7, and we were so thrilled to be able to just get out at all. And then on top of that, once you issued refunds or gave us some options, whether to carry the money over And to me, that was just great customer service, because as your slides indicate, you still incur the costs. So it simply could have been an email out to the people, sorry, province mandated us, we close, we still had costs, but you've managed to work it. And I'm sure the director of finance, as I would call you in my world, is probably tossing and turning a little bit at night, trying to figure out where that $4 million is going to come from. But hopefully the uptake from the residents, and we only contribute $23,000, but I can assure you that the residents of Portsmouth support you guys by going to Glen Eden. I mean, it's 15 minutes down the road, and it's a wonderful facility. One comment I will make, and I don't know if this is part of the Accessibility Act for Ontario, that I believe we have to be compliant by 25. But while I was there last winter, I saw an individual in a wheelchair trying to push himself through the snow all the way down to the lift, probably to watch a family member. And I'm just not sure if there's plans to put in some sort of accessible pathway for individuals in that circumstance at the Hill. And I'm not expecting an answer today. It's just something that I observed while I was there using facilities. So I really appreciate your presentation, and look forward to maybe a report back. Oh, one other item. This isn't self-serving, but I have noticed that when communication, especially around the Conservation Act changes, was going out, you were having all the signatures of the member municipalities except ours. So I'd appreciate it if ours was included. Not that I'm important, but whomever comes after me is likely more important than I am. But I know we're just a small player, but I think I'd appreciate it if our municipality was included in those correspondence as well. But other than that, great presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Seeley and members of council for allowing Marnie and I to take up a little bit of your time. And as always, all the feedback, Mayor Seeley is on point. I'll take it back, and we'll work with Postage staff on seeing what can be done at that one location.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. White Fox, do you have a resolution, please?
Council received correspondence item 10.1 regarding Conservation Halton Presidential Council Budget Presentation 2022 for information.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spillis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor? Councillor Bailey,
Favor?
Councillor Balmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Spillis.
In favor.
Thank you. Thank you again. Enjoy your day. Council, let's take a 5-minute break while Courtney moves over the next delegation or correspondence item. It's from the MTO. I believe there's going to be potential for lengthy conversation. So I'd like a 5-minute break, and then we'll resume. Okay, welcome back. Quick roll call. Councillor Bailey.
Present?
Councillor Balmer.
Present.
Councillor Goida.
Present.
Mrs. Wills.
Present.
Excellent. Clicked on the wrong item. There we go. Welcome, Julie and Jeff.
Hello, thank you.
Hello, thanks.
Are you able to? Yes, excellent. I like to have the video on when we receive presentations.
I
So whenever
believe
you're ready, you can begin. I don't know if you're planning on sharing your screen.
we're actually still waiting for Tim Sorchinsky. I think he's also waiting. He'll be presenting today.
Okay.
He should be online waiting to be added to the meeting. Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to start my video. Oh, there it is.
Well, if Tim is presenting, then I wouldn't necessarily require the other individuals to have their video on. But if you're going to address council, just quickly turn it on and just
Sure.
have personality to it. Thank you.
Will do.
Welcome, Tim.
Hello, welcome.
The floor is yours whenever you desire to start. I don't know if you plan on sharing your screen. We do have the presentation in our agenda package. So.
That's great. Thanks. I think, Jeff, will you be sharing your screen
I
for the
can, yeah,
presentation?
absolutely.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. So thanks very much, everyone. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, members of
Oh,
council.
sorry, Tim. Sorry to interrupt. I think we're also in need of Sarah Jewell on the call. She should be waiting as well from MTO. Yeah.
Absolutely. Could we wait one more moment for the MTO
yeah.
project manager drive? Awesome.
Whenever you're ready. Yep, there we go.
That's great.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to rush you. We'll wait for the screen sharing so then everybody's on the same page. Perfect.
Do you guys see the screen? Great.
Yep, we can see the screen.
Okay, Tim, if you're ready.
That's great. Thank you very much. So thanks very much for allowing us the opportunity to present the material related to the Highway 401 and 6 improvement study. The purpose of the meeting presentation is to provide a sneak preview of the materials that we're going to be presenting at a public information center that we have scheduled for early December. Next slide. So on our delegation, we do have Jeff Coy and Julie DeDecker from AECOM. Myself, I'm the consultant project manager from AECOM, and we also have Sarah Jewell from MTO, who is the MTO project manager for the assignment. So just to provide a brief introduction of the project, so the mid-block connector interchange, this is phase 2 of the overall implementation of the Highway 641 improvements project, and it features a brand new interchange on Highway 6 Hanlon, midway between Wellington Road 34 and Maltby Road. It will include a new bridge at Wellington Road 34 carrying traffic over Highway 6 Hanlon, and it also includes a new connection road and improvements to existing municipal roads and intersections. And I'll note that the first phase of the project has already been constructed, and that was the replacement of the Concession Road 7 bridge over Highway 401. That was completed, I think, 2 years ago now. Next slide. So for this next phase of the Highway 641 project, which includes the mid-block interchange, the key benefits of the project are that it will alleviate congestion on the local roads. It will enhance safety and capacity on Highway 6 Hanlon, and it will provide an improved link between Guelph and Highway 401. And it also brings the province one step closer for the ultimate goal of providing improved connectivity between Hamilton and Guelph, which includes the Morrison Bypass. Just to point out that our proposed works does align with the 3 key provincial plans, as well as Guelph-Wellington Transportation Study and the Wellington County Official Plan. So the purposes of the meeting is, as I mentioned, it really is to provide a sneak preview of the Public Information Center package. So within this package, what we'll do is we do want to, the PSC package will basically provide an overview of the study process. It's been going on for quite a long time and there's a lot of moving parts. So we do want to try to present that to you in a coherent fashion. Also, we want to provide an overview of the design build ready package, and I'll provide a definition of what that means in a moment. We also want to provide a summary of the refinements that we've made on the design. So these are refinements in addition to what was presented at the initial Public Information Center, which was earlier in 2021. We'll also provide an overview of some of the key concerns that we heard from stakeholders at that first PIC. We'll report on environmental investigation findings, and then next step for the project. So you'll hear me mentioning about design build and design build ready throughout the presentation. So just to provide clarification, design build is actually an alternative contract delivery model where the Ministry of Transportation in this case hires a contractor to complete the complete design of the project, and also obtain outstanding permits and approvals. And then they will actually go out and construct all of the works. The design build ready is a process that our company AECOM has gone through to prepare a design package that goes to the design builder. So that includes preparing, I guess, a basic 60% level detail design, and it basically summarizes all the commitments that the contractor will be responsible for when he goes through his design build process. Next slide. So in terms of previous studies, the study has been going on for quite a while now. Back in September of '95, there was the initial environmental assessment study, Highway 6 Freelton, northerly 16.9 kilometers to Guelph. And then in November '97, the preliminary design for that same component, it was done as an addendum. The study was reviewed by the Minister of the Environment, and we had obtained a notice of approval to proceed. And I guess there are conditions with respect to this notice that we've incorporated into our design package. And I guess this package has been distributed to members of council, and there is a reference to our project website. So all this information is available there, as well as any background reports as well. Next slide. So this is a flow chart which sort of shows the whole design process. So the early studies are shown in the box to the left, the orange box to the left. And as you go along the flow chart, it shows you sort of three different phases associated with the project. The phase one being the project for concession 7, which is completed. The middle box is phase 2. That is the Highway 6 Hanlon mid-block interchange, which is the subject of this presentation. And then there's the last phase, the subsequent phases, which will take on the remaining parts of the project, which will be a widening of Highway 401 from 6 to 10 lanes, as well as the Morrison Bypass itself. So following along the flow chart for the middle phase 2 box, so right now we're in the process of preparing that design build ready design. Part of that includes identifying the impacts to the project and mitigation. And you can sort of see the phase coming up in December is a public information center, and that's where we are in the process. So next slide, please. So this slide sort of carries on with the process. So you can see the middle orange box. I guess will be the continuation of the detailed design of the class environmental assessment project as part of the design build project. And the design builder in the next phase will actually, as I mentioned, finalize the design and also the construction staging as well. They will confirm environmental impacts and mitigation for construction, and then they will also issue what's called a design and construction report, which will be available for public and agency review. So in terms of summarizing the consultation to date, so we have been engaging with Indigenous communities and stakeholders throughout the process. I guess key stakeholders in the project include local municipalities, so that's Wellington County, Pushlinch, and the City of Guelph, emergency service providers, property owners, conservation authorities, public and federal regulatory agencies, and utility companies. And just to summarize, the very first public, I guess two key milestones with our consultation process include the first notice of study commencement, which was issued in 2017, and the previous public information center, which was held in early 2021, and that was for the broader 6401 project, which is for all 3 phases. Next slide. So some of the concerns that I guess were raised in Public Information Center number 1 include requests to consider roundabouts on Wellington Road 34. There was also a number of concerns related to emergency access to the Hanlon, Highway 6. Also, there were a number of environmental concerns identified, and they include impacts to groundwater, species at risk, and other environmental factors in the study area. There's a lot of good background information with respect to groundwater, as well as a lot of really good input we received from area residents, so we're well aware of the groundwater conditions in this area. And there's also been a number of impacts noted in terms of impacts to nearby residences as a result of noise, property access, and illumination. Next slide. So just a general project overview. So the project does include a brand new interchange on the Hanlon Expressway with, I guess, a new connecting road that will basically connect existing Wellington Road 34 to Con 7. The project also includes the reconstruction of Con 7 between Wellington Road 34 and Maltby Road. We'll be smoothing out some of those hilly crests and curves that are currently there. The project does include the closure of Maltby Road concession 4 intersection with the Hanlon Expressway, as that'll be in close proximity to the new interchange. There will be a new roundabout that will be constructed at County Road 34 and Concession Road 7, Wellington Road 34 and Concession Road 7. There'll also be installation of new overhead sign structures, traffic signals, partial illumination throughout the interchange. And there will also be emergency turnarounds constructed along the Hanlon. One will be provided just north of Maltby Road. That'll be a new one. And we will be retaining the existing emergency access, the emergency turnaround, which is just south of the existing Wellington Road 34. There'll also be drainage improvements such as infiltration ponds and stormwater ponds, as well as relocations of utilities. In terms of traffic control and illumination, you can see the location of the proposed traffic signals are shown by the red dots. They'll essentially be at the end of the off-ramps from Highway 6 Hanlon. The areas that you see in yellow are areas where we'll be providing partial illumination. So there are several areas which will have that, and that's essentially at the intersections and at decision points. Decision points being areas where we have, I guess, ramps coming off from both the Hanlon and also from the mid-block interchange. There will also be partial illumination at the intersections as well. We will be considering shielding of some of these illuminations, and that's to reduce light trespass at select areas. There will be stormwater management improvements identified within the project, and that is to control the volumes of water and also the quality of water, surface runoff. So there will essentially be two infiltration ponds constructed within the loop ramps of the interchange. There will also be enhanced flat bottom grass swales constructed along the east and west sides of the Highway 6 Hanlon. That's to help reduce flow velocities. And there will be a number of new culverts that will be constructed, small size culverts throughout. And you can see them, I guess, by a series of blue ticks, which are scattered throughout the study area. There will also be general improvements to existing ditching, including flat bottom ditches where land is available to further help with water treatment of runoff. In terms of utilities, there are a number of utilities which will require relocation. They include Hydro 1 along Concession Road 7, Hydro 1 and telecommunications along Wellington Road 34. There's also telecommunications comprising of Bell and Rogers, aerial and underground, along Con 7 and Wellington 34. And also there's an Enbridge gas main which runs along the west side of Con 7. We also note, I also noted that Con 7 will be reconstructed. So we'll actually be realigning Concession Road 7 slightly to the east, and that'll be to minimize impacts to hydro and the transmission corridor. There's also advanced ATMS, advanced traffic management systems, which will be installed along Highway 6 in the Hanlon. They will include CCTV cameras and one new variable message sign, which will be installed on the southbound lanes of the Hanlon, just north of the 34 interchange. Signage as well, there'll be overhead signs constructed along Highway 6 in Hanlon for the two exit ramps. So in terms of property, a majority of the property required for construction of the project has already been obtained by the ministry. We have identified a couple minor takings that are needed, and this is as a result of refinements through our design. So those negotiations are ongoing with the local property owners. There will be some construction required on entrances, and we will be obtaining permissions to enter to construct beyond the right-of-way. And there are select driveways in the study area which need to be modified, and we will do that in consultation with the property owners to make sure that their entrances tie into the new roadway alignments. In terms of emergency access, so this was, I guess, an issue which we discussed at quite length with emergency services and some of the municipal staff. I guess there was a concern to maintain a high degree of access for emergency vehicles. So in response to that, we are going to maintain the existing emergency turnaround, which is located just south of 34, and we will install a brand new turnaround just north of Maltby Road. So that will mitigate the closure of that intersection at Maltby. And it is noted that there still will be, I guess, some increases to travel response time for certain segments of Highway 6 and the Hanlon. However, overall, the travel time will improve immensely for the users of 6 Hanlon, and also accessing directly from 34 to the Hanlon, just by virtue of having the interchange ramp. Vehicles will be able to enter directly via loop ramps and turn ramps rather than waiting at a stoplight to access the Hanlon. Next slide. In terms of potential impacts and mitigation for environmental, there's been a number of environmental investigations that have gone on over the course of the project. So they include terrestrial, fish and fish habitat, groundwater, traffic noise assessment, air quality assessment, cultural heritage, archaeology, and social economic. So these preliminary impact assessment reports that were prepared for each of these disciplines, they will be shared by the public, and impacts and mitigation measures for all of these factors will be confirmed by the design build contractor in the next phase. And as mentioned, the design and construction report that we prepared for design build, that will be posted for review during the design build contract. In terms of noise and air quality, so noise and air quality was one factor that we did take a very careful and close look at. Noise impacts were considered by looking at the future traffic with the highway in place for 2041. And basically, we looked at what the resulting noise and air quality would be under those circumstances. And then I guess we did find that there were 2 properties that had an increase in noise beyond what the provincial standard is. So with these 2 properties, we did an exercise to determine whether mitigation via noise wall would be required. The exercise involves a look at technical, economic, and administrative feasibility. And what we determined was that it didn't pass the economic feasibility for these 2 properties, simply because it's just not economically viable to construct a noise wall of 100 meters plus just to mitigate for one individual property. Noise walls are generally economically viable when it services a whole community or a series of properties and houses that have noise impacts. So for those reasons, we won't be considering noise impacts in terms of noise walls. In terms of the air quality, I guess air quality, the air contaminants are anticipated to increase at these receptors as well, but that's basically due to anticipated increase in traffic using the Hanlon. And we've not identified, I guess, any mitigation, specific mitigation measures for air quality at this point. We have, as mentioned, collected a lot of information with respect to groundwater. So there have been comprehensive groundwater and hydrological studies completed as part of our project. These studies will basically confirm existing conditions and help us identify impacts on the project to groundwater resources and wetlands. So a comprehensive well monitoring plan will be developed in the next phase of the project, and that's in accordance with MTO and MECP protocols. And that will also follow during and also following construction phase if property owners allow. Next slide. In terms of loss in trees and impacts to vegetation, so there will be a landscape plan that will be prepared as part of the project. So they will focus on implementing native species, and we'll be looking to enhance, to protect forest edges, protect aesthetic enhancement, as well as provide additional habitat for some of the species at risk. In terms of impact to fish and fish to wildlife, fish and fish habitat, including species at risk. There will be multiple best practices and mitigations which will be applied during construction. So they will include, but not limited to, implementation of buffers, protective fencing and erosion sediment control measures. Where practical, we will be looking at restoring and revegetating any temporary disturbed areas. And we will be obviously applying timing restrictions for removal of habitat, and that's for protection of migratory birds, aquatic species, and species at risk. The project will include an overall benefits plan for the SAR species as related to habitat planting, monitoring, and protection. And in consultation with fisheries and oceans, the project will include improvements to fish habitat, namely brook trout, within the study area. And it includes larger open bottom or perforated bottom culverts, which would support the cold water fisheries. So the mitigation measures and overall benefits, they will be completed in consultation with MECP and DFO and the appropriate regulatory agencies prior to construction start. Next slide. So in terms of construction staging and sequencing, so the actual construction staging, that will be the responsibility of the design builder in the next phase. But we do anticipate, based on the amount of work that needs to be done, that this will be a 4-year construction schedule. During construction of the new interchange, the existing at-grade intersections at Wellington 34 and Maltby Road will remain open. It's anticipated that Highway 6 in Hanlon will remain open to traffic during the entirety of construction, but there may be some occasions that there may be an overnight full closure of the lanes. And also there may be some short-term single lane closures during off-peak periods. There also may be a need for temporary road closures and detours to facilitate installing bridge girders during the construction of the Wellington Road 34 structure, and also the construction of Con 7 itself. Local access, though, to private properties and businesses will be maintained, and property owners will be consulted on a one-by-one basis if there are any changes to property access. In terms of the project schedule, so proposals for the design build teams were actually submitted to the Ministry of Transportation last week. So the Ministry of Transportation is in the process of evaluating all the proposals, and the intent is to have a design builder on board by early 2022. And we expect that the construction of the mid-block interchange will begin following completion of the detailed design and submission of the design and construction reports. So anticipate that the first year, 2022, will largely be reserved for the design builders to actually complete the detailed design of the project, although likely we will see quite a bit of activity with the utility relocation in the first year. And then most of the construction work for the project will likely see in years 2, 3, and 4. So the timing for implementation of the subsequent phases of 6401, so that would include the widening of Highway 401, the replacement of bridges and ramps at the Hanlon 401, and also the Morrison Bypass. So that the completion of that depends on a number of factors. So that includes acquiring property for those works, relocation of utilities, environmental permits, approvals, and available funding. Our project team will continue to prepare the design build packages for the remaining works. That would be the Highway 401 widening and the Morrison Bypass, so that those projects are ready to go to construction once available funding has been confirmed. And then just to note that if you're looking for additional updates on the implementation of the project, that is available on our project website. And then in terms of next steps, this is just a summary of the activities that will be undertaken following the Public Information Center. So the project team will be looking at addressing comments received at PIC. We'll be confirming assessment of environmental impacts and mitigations for construction. There'll be finalization of design. The design construction report will be issued, and then the project will proceed to construction. So those are sort of the next key steps in the process. think that was the last slide. So thanks very much for listening through the presentation. Are there any questions or comments that any members of council might have?
Yeah, I just asked Jeff maybe once he's done sharing his screen, I'll open up to council. Jeff, hear me? Oh, here I see his mouse moving.
I do. Sorry, I'm just not familiar with Zoom format. I'm trying to unshare my screen now. I don't seem to have that
Ms. White Fox, could you help me, please?
control.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you for the presentation. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation. That was it's great to get a little sneak preview of what's coming up. I'm just going to ask one question about the emergency access option. I noticed that there's the 2 turnarounds along the Highway 6, and I guess my question is just, first of all, have you had a response from emergency services since that design option has gone in? And I was just wondering if there's a type of mechanism or a simulation that gives us sort of times and can predict how that option would work compared to existing options.
Yeah, that response I'll defer to Jeff. Jeff, are you aware of any recent input from emergency services based on our plan?
Thanks, Tim. Oh, sorry, I should go on video. We haven't received any responses back since responding to their comments. We were in receipt of their comments some time ago and held a meeting with them to discuss those in I believe it was the end of June of this year. And during that meeting, the idea of the turnarounds was discussed with them, and we finalized our response back to them after that meeting, and didn't receive any further comment from them at that point. And then it's, sorry, I just wanted to address the second comment regarding the modeling component part. That was included in the response back to the emergency services, were our modeled increases in travel times as well.
Mr. CEO, has the fire chief been able to review these recent changes?
Yeah, we received this information with the 2 layouts on update meeting we had with ACOM and MTO on Friday. I did share that information with our chief. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be at the meeting here today. His comments were he was pleased with them and satisfied that those will address the concerns on the Highway 6 portion, providing that the turning lane or the access points there did have the required acceleration and deceleration lanes associated with them. And if I recall correctly from the drawing that was shown on the screen in our call on Friday, the one north of Maltby was shown to have those. And I believe that they said that the existing one south of 34 would be maintained. I took a look at that one this morning and I didn't see that there's acceleration or deceleration lanes there. So perhaps it might be good for them to be included with that in the design. But like I said, we just saw this layout on Friday, and the chief was happy with it as long as those particular accesses and acceleration, deceleration lanes are provided.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Bailey, follow up?
Nope, that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. One of the slides included a note that this project will help alleviate congestion on local roads. And I'm just trying to get a sense of which local roads do you anticipate will see a reduction in traffic as a result of this construction?
In terms of reduction of congestion, we think that it'll be actually on Wellington Road 34. With the elimination of the traffic signal, there'll be free flow, I guess, movements to the, I guess, from 34 onto onto the Hanlon. So that would
Yes.
be your primary improvement would be along 34.
Okay, so no broader benefit then. You mentioned also about a variable message sign, and I'm thinking about when we often have situations when there's the Highway 401 is closed between the two sixes, either east or westbound, or between Guelph Line and the Highway 6s. And sometimes, periodically, it's closed westbound or west of the 6s. And so County Road 34 acts as the emergency detour route because it connects Town Line with Guelph Line, which creates a lot of challenges for our community. But I was trying to think about it in the context of southbound traffic on Highway 6 and the two intersections that will be created on 34, and how each of those intersections will work in the event that 34 is being used as an emergency detour route. For example, which, we've got a lot of traffic coming on highways, the Hanlon, and you've got that variable message sign. Will that message sign be used to direct people off of Highway 6 at the new interchange? And if so, can you just give me an idea of how each of those connections to 34 will function as proposed when it's being utilized as an EDR? Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. The variable message sign has been strategically placed north of the Wellington Road 34 connecting road interchange to provide that flexibility of advising if there is a closure or access to 401 is blocked and a detour on 34 is needed. So that message sign is largely in place there to provide that flexibility. So it will allow vehicles to get off at the 34 mid block. I guess traffic that would be on the mid block, they would then be, rerouted back to County Road 34 if they want to go westbound, and I guess they'd be rerouted to Concession Road 7 and then down to Wellington Road 34 to go eastbound. So Concession Road 734, the roundabout will facilitate that because it will allow vehicles to continue with a continuous move through the roundabout. They will not have to stop at a stop sign or wait at a light. So there will be good traffic flow through there. Concession Road 7, that will be reconstructed to higher standard to allow for the higher volumes. As mentioned, we're going to be getting rid of some of the crests and hills, so it will make travel on Concession 7 a little more easier. And then I guess the remaining two will be intersections. So vehicles will have to stop at those intersections to make turns. But if it is a closure which is of any duration, then we do anticipate that there'll be traffic, enforcement through OPP to help direct traffic through those intersections.
I guess you spoke very well about how well the east side connection with 34 will function. I guess my concern is about the west side connection to 34 from the interchange. There wasn't a lot of discussion about it in the presentation. And have you done some, I'm excited to have done some modeling when the 34 is being an EDR, but I'm concerned about stacking occurring up on there. It's not going to be a roundabout. It's not going to be signalized. Have you put much thought into what could happen on the west side connection to 34?
Can I interject? Can I interject real quick?
Sure.
You just made the statement that it would be expected or the assumption that the OPP would be doing traffic mitigation. That is not the case. So I think that's where the concern Councillor Bulmer is coming from. If you have all the traffic heading south on the Hanlon and everybody that's going to go west is going to come to a T intersection. Currently, when we have closures, we had one recently with a fatality maybe a month ago. All of the traffic from the 401 was diverted down the EDR, and we don't receive any support from the contractors or the OPP, unless, of course, there's maybe a mechanical malfunction at a signalized intersection, or I could maybe imagine another accident. But for the most part, we're left to fend for ourselves. So I believe what Councillor Bulmer is indicating is that he would desire a controlled intersection on both sides of the new mid-block interchange. And I don't mean to put words into his mouth, but we have a roundabout proposed at the reconstruction of 7, and I had the same thing wrote down here, whichever one it is, that we need maybe a little more control at that other intersection for when the Hanlon is in EDR for traffic to go west. So does that summarize it as well, Councillor Bulmer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You're far more concise and direct than I am. Yeah, I was looking for how can we improve the flow at that west side during an EDR event. Is the design sufficient to do that? And I don't know if it's right to be a roundabout or controlled lights, or if it's I don't know what the answer is, but I just share, that's exactly my concern. I don't think it's going to function at all when 34 is backed up. It was carrying all the traffic from the 401.
Yeah, all of our design is essentially based on projected traffic volumes that we have for the area. And, we design basically for the worst case hour in the AM and the PM. That helps confirm the number of lanes. It helps confirm whether signals are required at particular intersections. So our design parameters really don't include accommodating the absolute worst case scenario when you have it functioning as a detour. But we will take your comment back, and we will look at that in a little more detail.
Thank you very much, and I understand those comments, but since it is officially posted as an EDR and it's not an uncommon occurrence that County Road 34 is taking the majority of traffic, either the eastbound or the westbound on the 401 on a regular basis, I think it's worthy to put a little bit of extra effort into that westbound intersection or west side intersection. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment.
Yeah, I want to elaborate a little further on one comment Councillor Bulmer mentioned. He questioned you on congestion, and in your report it says it's going to alleviate congestion on some other roads. His question line then asked you specified County Road 34, and then Councillor Bulmer said, well, the comment that then there wouldn't be a broader impact. I just want to clarify because we're looking at traffic patterns in our area on a more municipal level and road upgrades, and we're hoping that this improvement at the mid block could affect other roads. But have you or your design team have you looked at the other roads, or was your primary focus just on 34? I mean, would you feel comfortable saying it would not have a broader impact on other roads outside of 34? Does that make sense?
In terms of improvements, so I guess we looked at all the roads that are within our study limits. We obviously didn't look at the broader impacts throughout the county. Another area where we were a little sensitive in terms of improvements were, I guess, in the vicinity of Maltby County Road 4, up where we're closing the Maltby Road intersection. So we did take a close look at that intersection as well. And based on our traffic projections, that intersection will still function to an appropriate level of service in the near future. So we sort of looked at to that level, but we didn't look really beyond the study limits to any great detail.
That's perfectly fine. I just didn't want a headline in the paper. ACON and MTO say that mid-block will not provide any, improvements to traffic in Puslinch, so I was just worried about that headline in the paper. Councillor Bulmer, sorry.
One follow-up, if I could, Mr. Chair. I believe the study area defined in this does it not extend beyond Brock Road, the study area on the east side?
It does for the broader study. You are correct. I guess the subject of these improvements are centered around the area of the mid-block interchange. So certainly, once we get to work on the rest of the project, we will be looking at that in a little more detail. That would be the Morrison Bypass, widening along 401. We will be looking at, I guess, the impacts in those areas in more detail in the subsequent phases.
So I appreciate the mayor focusing on this, because it was my expectation that when we saw concession 7 being rebuilt to a higher standard, and that the fact that it connects to our industrial park, we would see that statement that says we'd see reduced congestion in other roads, that a lot of the industrial traffic that was currently going up Brock Road within the study area might shift to concession 7, the new reconstructed concession 7, which gives a direct connection to the Highway 6 or to the City of Guelph's Industrial Park on Maltby Road. So I would, and I thank you, the mayor, for picking up on this. That's what I was looking for. If there was any indication of what those changes might be on a road like Brock, parallel to the new reconstructed concession 7.
Councillor Goyda.
Thank you. Thanks very much for being here to present today and answer questions about this phase of the project. A lot of the questions that I did have, you did already address in your presentation, but the one concern that the slide deck was silent on and hasn't been incorporated into the design is the access to the designated employment industrial lands that run adjacent to the mid-block. And those employment and industrial lands, they've been designated as such for a long time, and they're near and dear to us at the township because they will support long-term sustainability of our township. So it's disappointing that the access piece hasn't been incorporated into the design. I do realize that there's no active development plans to comment on, but it's also understandable that there's a challenge to a property owner to prepare a development plan without knowing where access will be permitted, if even at all. So, we've talked about it before, but it's a real chicken and egg scenario. What comes first? How do we proceed? And you did mention that the design build ready phase, it outlines what the design build contractor will be responsible for. And so to me, it is really important that these concerns are identified in this phase so that they don't get lost in the design build phase, the next phase. So I guess my question really is, how can we as the township get a clear understanding of the steps that are necessary and what's going to be required to determine if and when access is going to be or can be provided to those designated parcels?
I can answer that. So I guess we're very well aware of the development potential of that area. I guess for us, it's very difficult to do an assessment in terms of what that entrance would look like, simply because, as you mentioned, there really haven't been any development applications available to date. We don't know whether it could be a mini Amazon distribution center or light commercial or we just have no idea in terms of what that development would be, the number of traffic or trips that would be generated. Would it be just a right in, right out entrance? Would it be a 4-lane T intersection that'd be proposed? So all these questions and unknowns really make it a challenge for us to accommodate any type of future entrance or to commit to any future entrances. I guess the one thing though that we did do is we did take a careful look at our design as it relates to the placement of the interchange ramps and site distances. And the only thing we can confirm is that our design will not preclude the ability to incorporate an access to the future development lands.
Okay, so I guess what I'm just asking is, if there's any flexibility in the design to allow for some kind of potential future entrance or access, but I guess what I'm hearing is that's not.
I mean, there is a flexibility in that we're not precluding an entrance being constructed in the future. I mean, should an application come in over the course of the design build process or during construction, then the ministry and the design builder will be obligated to have a closer look at that, and there may be still opportunities available to incorporate provisions for that. But as of now, since there really isn't any details available on what would happen at those lands, there's really little we can do at this point in terms of incorporating any provisions or further planning for the future.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Councillor Spolis?
So I'd like to follow up on Councillor Goyda's concerns. It's a question for our CEO. So CEO, is there a way that you can predict some sort of usage for those development lands based on a certain usage and provide that information to the MTOs such that something can be provided as a future knockout, so to speak, and on that side of the road?
I could review that issue with our planning staff. I think that the challenge is it's really dependent on what the owner of the property would be proposing, because different types of proposals, different densities, different types of or scales of development might result in different aspects. So we could try. I can't answer you yet, yes or no, but we could see what we could compile and put together, but it would be dependent on what the property owner wants to do.
I agree with you. Certainly, I think it's, you want to save money, you do it now before it's in construction, and then it becomes astronomical. So it behooves us to try to get that done sooner than later. Okay, so next question is related to the one property owner who you mentioned it doesn't make economic sense to provide a noise barrier wall for that individual. What sort of mitigation are you proposing for that one individual or one property?
Mitigation measures typically include noise walls. Other mitigation measures are berms if property is available. But I guess in both of the cases, there really isn't the ability to provide berms, I don't believe. So at this point, we're not really looking at any form of mitigation for these two properties. The two properties, incidentally, one is located just near the Maltby Road closure, and the other property that is impacted by noise is actually located on the future development lands near the mid-block connector.
Okay, I'm concerned that nothing can be done for these property owners. I don't know what the levels are that these individuals are going to experience, and I don't know what your criteria is in terms of noise mitigation. I certainly don't want to go down the road where these people are forced out of their homes and there's a big economic loss to them. Is there any way you can consider perhaps buying the property out just to alleviate this concern in the future?
Property purchase is a tool that can be considered. I'm not sure if we would go down that road. I guess it would have to see what the property owner aspiration would be, and if they want to request a buyout, then that would be something that would be put forth to the ministry, and I guess they would probably have to consider that. They would review and consider that.
Okay, as part of your public information center, would the actual noise levels anticipated be provided?
Yes, all the background information with respect to our noise study will be available at the PIC, and it'll also specify exactly what those noise levels will be. And it also will be some high-level information in terms of our procedure that we go through in terms of determining what those noise values are, and how we do an assessment in terms of whether properties are eligible for mitigation for noise abatement.
Okay. The next series of questions relate to funding. Funding is a driver for start and finish of projects. Is this particular interchange fully funded?
Yes, the mid-block interchange and all the works that I had presented today as part of what we call phase 2 is funded by the ministry and will be constructed within the next 4 years.
Okay, and then the next phase, the Morrison Bypass and so on, how much of that is funded? Is it strictly the site investigation, or is a design funded, or it's awaiting pending approval of funding?
Currently, the design is funded. That is the preparation of a design build package, which AECOM is currently will be preparing. That part is funded, but any further works involving construction of the subsequent phases still has not yet been funded by the province.
Okay, is the intent that these two projects be done in series, or can they overlap? In other words, you're going to do this interchange first and then wait till it's finished and then start the other phase, or can they overlap?
I think the intent is to wait for the completion of construction of this phase, and then the remaining works would be reviewed when funding is available. So the remaining works could be done all in one go, or they could still be built in subsequent phases. We don't know that just yet. It really depends on when and how much the funding becomes available.
Okay, so you're saying this project will take 2 to 3 years, so you'll be finished by late 24, early 25, and you're saying the next phase is going to start after that then?
That's correct. It'd be a duration of 4 years, but that still could change. I mean, the government priorities do shift and change all the time, so it is possible that the adjacent projects could become funded sooner. So there always is a possibility that that could happen in parallel. But as of now, based on the information we have, it doesn't seem to be the case.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. A little bit of humor here. That VMS sign, can we have that installed next week? Because I don't know if you've ever been driving down the Hanlon and then you get on top of the bridge and you see a sea of brake lights. It's a very long wait till you get to the next exit. So a little heads up. But no, I think that'll be a great tool to have for our residents that if the 401 is congested, that they can get some warning and take the EDR. My first line of question might be for the MTO, but this project was announced, Councillor Splos, you could remind me, maybe 2016, the previous term of council. Was the project not announced as fully funded back at that point? And I'm not talking mid-block, I'm talking the bypass. Does anybody have that information if the bypass portion was funded previously?
So the stage 1 funding was provided for all of the design and investigations. I don't recall if stage 2 construction was also funded at that time. There was the commitment to start construction in 2019, which was the bridge over the 401 at Concession 7.
Okay. I have other channels I can follow up on that to confirm or not. For the mid-block, focusing back on the mid-block, we're going to have these connector roads, the new connectors and the upgrade concession 7. Who has the authority or responsibility when those are completed to download them to the appropriate municipality? Is that an MTO decision?
The concession 7, I know Glenn and I have talked about this, but it is still Puslinch's road. We're making some upgrades to it and it will get more traffic due to those, but it is, the word I like to use is borrowed and improved and then returned. The mid-block connection road, the ministry does like to maintain the area between the ramps, which is the majority of the connection road. If you're interested in sort of the portion that's right off of 34, we can definitely discuss that. Fair, yep.
I want less roads.
Okay.
Roads. We're of the opinion you're already aware of it that that concession 7, once you borrow it, we don't want it back, so you can have it. And just download it to the upper tier municipality, and that would save us a lot of conversations and difficulty. So hopefully you have that ability, but I'll leave that with you and Glenn to hash out for now.
Okay.
So I had something written here about in your presentation. This might be going back to ACOM, but there is no mention of phase 3 in the flow chart after a certain point, and that makes sense because you just mentioned the funding for that is not in place. Just looking at my notes. So 3 to 4 years to build the mid-block interchange. There's a lot of talk around the Bradford bypass and is fully funded. Can you give me the comparison of the two projects? Like, what's the length of the construction period for the Bradford bypass versus a mid-block interchange? It seems like, and this presentation you provided, it gives a lot of insight to me, all the utilities that need to be moved, the impacts of the Hydro One corridor and those such things. But is the like a full bypass like a 10-year project, or are they able to build a full bypass up there in 3 years, and this one is just maybe due to resources not able to be completed in a more expedient fashion?
Yeah, for the Bradford Bypass, that project is sort of at a different stage of design. That project is still in the environmental assessment stage. So that project will actually be in that stage for another year and a half. They're not anticipated to have the preliminary design and environmental assessment component completed until the winter or spring of 2023. So that project is still in its infancy, so to speak. So there really hasn't been any work done in terms of identifying construction timelines as of yet, because we're still early in the process of doing the preliminary design in EA for that project.
Okay, fair enough.
Also, I don't think the funding mechanism has been confirmed. We don't know whether it would be a design build type of project, traditional design, or whether it'd be a P3 design where it'd be designed and constructed all at the same time. The delivery method has not been confirmed yet for the Bradford Bypass.
And I understand that. I mean, I just see the announcements being made and it's fully supported, fully funded. And obviously, I'm disappointed that we haven't had similar announcements here. However, it sounds like there's still opportunity for our project to move forward. That project isn't as close to being in the ground and construction beginning as I maybe believed it was. So again, I'll keep my channels to bring attention to our project. Oh, the sound mitigation for the houses affected, I apologize if I'm ignorant on this part of it. One home is on the west side of the Hannon near the mid-block, or are both properties affected on the west side?
I believe both properties are on the west side, one north of Maltby and one is in the vicinity of the connection road, I believe.
So as our predominant winds in the winter are from the west, I would encourage design to include a living snow fence for protection on the new mid-block, and maybe that could help mitigate some of the sound as these trees or whatever foliage you decide to plant there grow. It would act as a noise buffer, and that's another. I'm almost sure that the minister made an announcement through Twitter or some sort of social media of their use of a live snow fence application through the network. So I think that's just it would just serve two purposes and hopefully mitigate it for those two homes.
Okay, thanks for your suggestion. We'll look into that.
I think that's all I have. You answered most of it. I really appreciate the presentation. Is there anything further from council or staff that maybe we've missed? No? Councillor Bailey?
Thank you. I just had a question looking at the map when we talked about concession 7. There's a little section of 7 south of 34 that's not in the study area. And I'm wondering if there's a benefit to getting it in there and how that can happen.
Who wants to tackle that one?
I guess to this date, we haven't really identified a need for any upgrades to that portion of Con 7. It's not really, it doesn't really impact the project in general. The only part of the section south of Wellington Road 34 we need to do is we do need to construct a little portion of it to align with the roundabout. That's really all we're doing to date. I mean, if there is an interest for additional works on Con 7, I suggest that the ministry be advised of that. I think unfortunately it's probably a little late right now to incorporate it into the contract because the design build contract is going to be issued in early in the new year. But certainly if there is any interest, it's probably good to advise the MTO. I'm not sure what action they can take, but certainly would be a first step.
Okay, and is the roundabout accommodating the gravel trucks? I thought I read it was a single lane roundabout.
Yep, that's correct. It's proposed to be a single lane roundabout. We are constructing shoulders and I guess platforms around the roundabout to accommodate the larger vehicles. So the gravel trucks and larger trucks will be able to navigate through the roundabout.
Thank you.
That just reminded me of another note I had made. The EDR, we spoke of it earlier, where if the 401 stop, the support ends when the traffic gets off the 401. And currently the EDR is directed down through Aberfoyle, and then it would turn west on 34. And historically that was that way because 34 and County Road 46 was signalized. So it was my understanding they want EDRs to be on controlled access points. So once the roundabout is constructed, I assume that's considered controlled. I'd like to see signage modified to try to direct traffic down concession 7 out of our hamlet. There's an emergency response component. There's so much traffic on 34 backed up, leading even to the fire hall. Our first responders have a tremendous difficulty getting to the hall. Once you have a big red truck with lights and sirens, they tend to get out of your way more, but when you're coming in your pickup, it's a different story. So, and I do understand that we could put all the signs we want in the world, but people would maybe still proceed north into Aberfoyle. But that's another conversation we can have with the contractor of the day, that if there is a closure, temporary signage, EDR, point a big arrow and try to get the majority of it going down. So that's just my comments on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think we can cut her loose. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate it. We look forward to the public information meeting.
Great, thank you very much. And one thing I just wanted to note as well in closing is that we actually have confirmed the dates of the Public Information Center. This is hot off the press. The dates are December 6th to December 12th. So it'll be a 1-week period where the PIC displays will be available for review and comment. And then there will be one additional week allocated for a review period. So the review period will happen from the 12th to the 19th.
Will you be providing us an official or letterhead that I can either push out through social media or we can provide to the public as well?
Yep, we're in the process of notifying the public, and there will be news ads and letters sent to all stakeholders. And yep, you will be receiving an official notification in the coming days.
Excellent. That's great news. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, Ms. Hoyt-Fox, could you read the resolution to receive the presentation, please?
Council received correspondence item 10.2, presentation from AECOM and MTO regarding the Highway 6 Hanlon Expressway project for information.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spillis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor? Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
Councillor Spillis.
In favor.
That's carried. Thanks again. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. .3 resolution. Is Kyle going to present this, or are we just going to support it?
Kyle is here with us for the next 2 items, so I can move them over.
Sure. There he is. A nice rural property there, Kyle.
Thanks. It's the view of my walk with the dogs every morning.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, the floor is yours. I'll get Ms. Hoyt-Fox to read the resolution first, please. Just keep this all official.
That council received correspondence item 10.3 regarding the Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee municipal member nomination, and that council support Councillor John Sapoulis as the municipal representative for Wellington County, Halton Region, Dufferin County, and Grey County on the Lake Erie Source Protection Committee, and that staff forward the resolution to the Lake Erie Source Protection Committee for consideration.
I move.
Oh, that's Councillor Balmer moved, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All right, Kyle, you're up. Quick summary. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Yes, quick summary. The report kind of speaks for itself in the nomination. Councillor Sapoulis has been ably serving us for 4 years. This is a 1.5-year extension just to align with municipal election cycles, because he does have the distinction of serving 17 municipalities in this in this role. So we thought from an administrative perspective, it may be better to have his term expiring just shortly after, 6 months after the municipal elections, so that it can just be dealt with through the regular kind of appointments to boards and committees process that each council does.
Sorry, for timing wise, 6 months after the election. So if Councillor Spoulos is not re-elected, which Councillor Spoulos, you're listening, that's not what I feel is going to happen, but that would take him into the new term of council. Is that appropriate?
That's thank you, Mayor. That's a good point. There needed to be a little bit of buffer time. The SPC meetings only happen about 4 times a year, so it would probably really be one meeting if that was to occur. It'd be probably one meeting that the representative would be, the Councillor Poulos would be representing in that case. And really once the new municipal council is elected, the expiry of the term happens. I think it would be
December 9th,
6
first
months
week of
after.
December.
Yeah, but there could be a member nominated earlier, like ahead of the expiry of the term, if council so wished to do that.
Okay, we'll leave it with you. Tamo ran into that difficulty last term. Ms. Hoyfox?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it just looks like we've lost all other staff members. I don't see our CAO, our Director of Finance, or our Director of Public Works.
That's okay. We got a clerk and we got the council. Those are the important people. Let's carry on.
Okay, sorry about that.
Well, so anyways, so Kyle, that's seems like it will be a non-issue, and I'm sure if there were a circumstance like that, the new member or a member of the new council could shadow the individual as almost like a training session, which would be a great opportunity. So
yeah,
I'll wait a couple minutes for Courtney, can you turn your video on until they return so I know that we have a clerk, please, if it's appropriate? There we go.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if they're all at the office and we've lost some internet at the office. I'm not sure. I'm just going to send them a quick message.
You know what? Why don't we take a 5-minute break and see if we can resolve the internet issue? Is that okay, council? Yeah, okay. Courtney, just contact me old school ways. Give me a phone call or something if what's going on. Be right back. All right, now that we have our internet reestablished, let's do a quick roll call. Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Balmer.
Present.
Councillor Goida.
Present.
All right. So we have the resolution read. Council, are we going around the table? I think Councillor Bailey, any questions?
No questions. I am in full support.
Okay, Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
And Councillor Goida.
I'm also in favor.
Excellent. Here's my agenda. All messed up now. Okay, next report. And we'll welcome Councillor Spoulos back. 10.4.1. Can Ms. Whitefox read that resolution, please?
Certainly. So I've just grouped 10.4.1 and 10.4.2 together. I believe Kyle's here to kind of speak to it in total. So it's
Okay.
at this point, the resolution is just suggested to receive those items for information.
Okay. Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spoulos, seconder. Councillor Balmer.
Yes.
Congratulations on your appointment, Councillor Spoulos.
Well, thank you very much. I thought you would volunteer.
Oh, sir. I would if I had to. Okay, Kyle, just some summary of the two reports. You want to deal with them individually? I know you didn't pen the Hardin one, but yeah.
Whatever council wishes. Stan sends his regrets. He's out. He's unavailable today, but I can present them both together and then take questions. In regards
Hang on. I'll just do Hardin because council had a chance to review it. And I'll just see if there's any comments, then we'll just go right to your report. Councillor Bailey, any comments on Hardin's report, please?
No, no questions. No, we can move on.
Councillor Balmer?
Thank you. No, I support the comments that Mr. Denhout has made.
Councillor Goida?
Yeah, I have no questions either, and I support the comments.
Councillor Spoulos?
I likewise support the comments, very well thought out report, and I look forward to seeing what happens next.
Yeah, I support the comments. When I was reading the report, and I don't remember the specific page, but he highlights a concern that if there's impact on their water taking, that could result in Buslinch wells needing to reduce their taking. And my understanding was it would be the other way around, because our wells are in existence first. So I just didn't want to give the impression to our neighbor to the north that if their new well has an impact, that we would be reducing our usage so that they did not have to. And I may have misread that, but that's just my only comment. And now, Mr. Davis, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I made note of that comment for Stan, and we'll take a look at that before we finalize that memo. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The report in front of you is meant to be read in conjunction with Mr. Denhoud's memo, as well as also in conjunction with a memo written on behalf of Guelph Hermosa by their hydrogeologist, RJ Burnside. It is following up the direction that we received from council approximately a month ago in terms of providing comments back to the city of Guelph regarding the water supply master plan. I am able to report that we have scheduled, there's a number of recommendations in my memo, and we have scheduled with the City of Guelph staff one of those meetings. It's going to happen in the first week of December, and I suspect it'll be the first of a number of meetings going forward. And the purpose of that meeting will be to go through the comments received through the various memos from both township hydrogeologists and myself, as well as comments made directly to the City of Guelph by the township councils and in the City of Guelph's presentations back in October. I'd be happy to provide clarification or take any comments or questions.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Kyle. I think you just answered mine. My question was just more around how will we know that these comments would be included in the appropriate time frame? So making sure it's not a, oh, we should have, and oh, we've missed, an important time. So I guess I was just looking for that, and you've answered that with a December scheduled meeting. And then what type of response? And I guess through open dialogue is where we're heading here.
Okay. Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Davis, for an excellent report. Certainly appreciate your comments regarding the 20-month delay in the City of Guelph, including us in the Tier 3 study. That was wholly unacceptable, but not out of character. And I'm glad you made the comment about Guelph operating in a vacuum. It doesn't exist in a vacuum, and they shouldn't behave as if they're somehow not connected to the rest of the world. So I appreciate those kind of comments as well. And I support your recommendations regarding these, the extra involvement interactions between the two. But I do recognize that this may have some additional expenses for us. And I wonder from staff, have we accounted for those in our current operational budget for next year, if we have, are we going to be able to recover those costs from the city along with the other source protection costs that we've talked to them about repaying?
Right, I can speak to that. With regards to the source protection costs, I'll speak to that first. We are in discussions with the City of Guelph to address those. Kyle is an active part of those discussions. He's been instrumental in getting us to this point, and it looks like we'll be able to be bringing an agreement at some point in the near future to council to address those. we have a meeting scheduled. I just received an update that it's sometime within the next 2 weeks. I forget the date offhand, but we are going to be getting another update on those. With regards to the comments on the master plan itself, I don't think we're able to recover those. Kyle, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we're able to recover those. There isn't an agreement in place regarding those. So those are just things that would continue on. I know we've had some expense associated within our budget that has been able to accommodate those. So I would think that those would just continue as is.
Okay, so just to clarify, it was the recommendations in the report. I wasn't looking to expense them for preparation of the report, but the future expenses of the extra meetings that are recommended in the report with our staff and city staff, that's going to have a budgetary impact for us. The 2 points with that was, is it in our operational budget for next year to fund that? And can we recover those costs of those additional costs? And I think you've already said no to that if I read the broader answer that you gave, but have we included them in the budget?
We do have funds within the budget, yes, but I don't think they're going to be recoverable, no.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councillor Goyda.
This is a wonderfully written report or comments. I really like how it demonstrates, like with examples, the importance of early and frequent engagement between the city and the township and the county. And I support all of the recommendations in there. I was wondering if there's any value in asking the city for a sort of a formal response to these questions or recommendations, or if you feel that it can adequately be addressed through these meetings, or at least the first meeting that's scheduled to take place.
Thank you, Councillor Goyda. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think a formal response would be appropriate for sure, and we can certainly request that. They are working through a class environmental assessment process, so there's a lot of documentation and kind of formal responses that they have to do anyway with any sort of consultation that they do. So yeah, I think that's definitely something we can ask, and I think that's something that the city would be fine with. I can't speak for the city, of course, but just knowing kind of how these projects are and the amount of kind of formal responses and engagement records that they have to keep, I can't imagine they'll balk at that. So yeah, we can certainly, I'll add that and we can ask.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Spose.
So Kyle, have you had a chance to look at the Burnside report yet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, yes, I have. Yes, I have.
My concern is make sure that our consultant and Guelph Hermosa's consultant are more or less on the same page. In other words, you emphasize both of them the same points type of thing and give equal weighting type of thing. I just would hate to have the city of Guelph say, you're saying this and you're saying this, and makes our points moot.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can assure you, Councillor Sapoulis, it's meant to be a package, and it's going to be submitted as a package. Actually, before we wrote these comments, myself, Mr. Denho, Mr. Schmeichel, who's the township hydrogeologist for Guelph Hermosa with Burnside, and then Harry Niemi, who's the director of public works for Guelph Hermosa, all sat down. We met. We discussed kind of, who was going to cover what in their comments, and it is all planned out to kind of integrate together, and it'll be submitted as a package. I'll probably put a cover letter on top of it, just because the memos themselves are sort of addressed to kind of internal staff. Glenn, in my memos addressed to Glenn, Stan's memo was addressed to me, so forth. So we'll put a cover letter on top of it. But yes, they do all integrate. There are some specifics from the Puslinch perspective and the Guelph Hermosa perspective that are different, of course. But the overarching theme of them, they are consistent with one another.
Okay, I guess there's a suggestion to our mayor. If this goes political, in other words, it gets involved at the with the Guelph mayor. I'd like to suggest that you and our Mayor White get together and make sure that we have a common page type of thing when they get approached them. In other words, both you and the mayor meet together with the mayor of Guelph type of thing, so they're not conquering, dividing us.
I can tell you, Councillor Spools, not that I'm hiding anything from you. Mayor White and I have frequent conversations around the source water, and I think it would be fair to say, and Kyle could maybe collaborate this, but corroborate this, sorry, that you know, the cost associated with source protection is something, you know, Guelph also wants to address. And so I will say yes, we would work with Mayor White. Unfortunately, I'm not well received politically from our mayor to the north, and it might be advantageous just to talk directly to Mayor White. But I've got enough time under my belt now, Councillor Spoolis. I will assure you that I will work the channels appropriately, and you know, we have a great voice there with Mayor White, multi-term mayor, knows the political spectrum. So, and he's our neighbor as well. I'm comfortable that he would advocate for us as a whole, and that might be more advantageous. So, but yes, that can happen.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Carl. That's all I have.
Now you got me distracted, Councillor. What was I going to? Oh, the leaking. When we had the presentation from the Guelph staff, they downplayed the importance. I shouldn't say they downplayed it. It wasn't as high of a priority in their opinion, and it wasn't economically feasible. It was in line with industry standard. So then it led to, and you may mention this in your report, that, you know, it was a great report. I know that you were really advocating for sooner engagement. But the way an analogy I would look at it is, in the 70s, we had a gasoline crisis. And we had these great big cars that gobbled a lot of gas. And, you know, their answer, you know, whoever it was, the government of the day wasn't, we'll go drill more holes, let's find more gas. They mandated more efficiency. And that came at a cost. And we adapted. And I feel you can take that same type of thinking towards the water system in Guelph, that, yeah, there's going to be a cost associated with it. But if you just keep drilling more wells and bringing in more water, you're still going to lose a percentage of that through leaks. So I like that you've highlighted that you're not just accepting the, well, and maybe you would ultimately accept that argument if you had been engaged earlier in the process, right? So, but for now, you're still saying, I think that needs to be revisited. So I really appreciate that, because, and that ties into my previous comment that, well, they end up needing to drill wells outside their boundaries, and then our residents or corporate citizens have to reduce their water taking simply on the fact they don't want to spend the money to fix the system. Well, that's concerning. So I'm glad you highlighted it, and I'm also glad that the meetings are coming up. This is what you're asking for, and it's the right direction. And so those are my comments. Does council have anything further after I babbled on? No. All right, I'll call that in favor. Councillor Bailey.
Yep, in favor.
Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
And Councillor Stapoulis.
In favor.
Thanks, Kyle. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Apologize to Mayor White for me for speaking on his behalf.
Okay.
All right. Council reports. So I will start. We had a TAMO executive meeting. We received that fee schedule. I apologize to council for not getting it out a little sooner. I sent it this morning. Ms. White Fox, I'd like to have that on the agenda for the December 4th, the fee schedule that I sent. I maybe didn't CC you, but I will. And so that was approved. There was also, I think a confirmation came out, maybe we spoke of this earlier, that MPAC is asking me for, Leave of the ARB decision, so that's disconcerting. So the county has some work to do. They have to see when, I guess they're expecting a early, what did they say? Early spring trial date for the leave between MPAC and the industry, and try to keep council up to date on how that progresses. But yeah, it's extremely disappointing. So any council updates? Councilor Spillis?
Yes, I'd like to update the council on the internet process, what's happening in the landscape. You may recall sort of toward the beginning of the year that there was a flurry activity to have endorsement letters signed for all these various ISPs, internet service providers, seeking funding from either the feds or the province. Unfortunately, we had a federal election, and what happened is everything slowed down from that end on any funding announcements, who's got what. We're told that it's imminent. Some funding announcements will come from the feds. On the provincial side, there was the ICON funding, and that got canceled. And what's put in place was what they call a reverse auction. The entire province of Ontario is divided into certain parts. And the intent is that through a reverse auction, each part will be open to bid to the ISPs to bid to provide service. In other words, they will say the intent is for them to get the lowest price for providing service in a particular area. Now, where that stands is the province is using Infrastructure Ontario as their lead on this. They issued requests for qualifications sometime in August, and they closed in the end of October. The understanding is that they want 7 weeks to review and approve the various ISPs for bidding on the various packages. Puslinch is going to be part of the entire Wellington package, so the entire county is one big package for somebody to bid on. The concern that everybody seems to have right now is, guess what? There's a provincial election coming up mid-year, and guess what? It's going to delay the process again. So that is a big concern. So we're hearing that from the various ISPs. They're not happy with the process. It seems to favor the bigger ISPs as opposed to the smaller ISPs. But we'll see how this shakes out. Unfortunately, right now, we're sort of in a holding pattern, as I said, on the federal funding. And on this thing here, hopefully it gets off the ground and decisions can be made before the provincial election, but we'll see. And the intent is through the reverse auction, they want everything done by 2025. In other words, they're asking them, you're going to bid on it, and you got to commit to doing by 2025. And obviously, the ISPs are saying, well, okay, there isn't enough material out there. There's enough contractors out there, all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of hiccups in this process. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spillis. Anything else from council members? Ms. Whitefox, you have a resolution?
Council received the mayor and council member update for information.
Get a mover for that, please. Councillor Goyda?
Yep.
Councillor Bailey? Seconded. All in favor? Councillor Bailey? Councillor Balmer?
Favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
Councillor Spillis?
In favor?
All right, next up, bylaws. Ms. Whitefox, do you have a resolution for the bylaws, please?
I have two separate resolutions. One is for the first reading, and we also have Mr. Tom Alinsky here to speak to this as well. So that resolution or motion is that the Township of Puslinch draft site alteration bylaw be taken as read for a first reading in open council on November 24th, 2021.
Thank you. Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spillis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All right, this one, I believe we will, we're discussing some advice from our solicitor later in the meeting, so I'll just leave that at the direction of that. Any questions or comments for the first reading? Councillor Bailey.
I guess I'm just looking for some clarification on what our process is here today. So if there are some comments and changes to it, is that where we're dealing with it now?
Mr. CAO.
I can speak to that. This is a process similar to what we've undertaken with other bylaws. It's a complex one that's a work in progress. So this isn't by any means a final bylaw. This is something that's still very much in the process. So this is basically just, this is where we are at this point, and there's still going to be ample opportunity for further discussion, further input. We're going to do a public consultation process, all of that as well. Any specific comments, we could take them, but we will be dealing with them and responding to them when we come back with future versions for second and third and final reading whenever that does take place. This is basically just marking it as a draft at this point.
Mr. CAO, at the beginning of this council agenda, we had an additional item, and that was the questions and concerns from council members. Is it a safe assumption to say that after adopting this as a first reading, if members of council provide those questions and councils, they'd be included in the next meeting with the second draft?
Absolutely, that would be a good way to do it, yes.
So if council's comfortable with that, unless there's something you desire to have some discussion about immediately, those comments can be forwarded to staff and they'll be included on once receiving the second draft. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions is, in lieu of time, putting something written and then having council see it later and having time to think it through and then have more meaningful discussion on it. I think sometimes when comments are just thrown out there, it would be nice if we had a little more time to process some thoughts. So I am fine to just put my comments in writing and then have it show up on the next draft if that suits the rest of council.
Okay. Councillor Balmer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. CAO, for the clarification regarding the process through first and then sometime a second and perhaps sometimes a third reading. But at this point, I would like to identify a few of the things that I've seen through this this current draft. I want to thank the staff and Mr. Helinski for the work they've put in so far, and I really appreciate the section 11, which provides some latitude for staff to deal with maybe some of the projects that were never intended to be dealt with as part of site alteration, or those normal activities that would take place on a property that also were never intended to be dealt with through site alteration. So I really appreciate that. That gives me a great deal of comfort that this instrument or this bylaw can be a little bit more user-friendly for our residents. But one other piece regarding public notice. Back in 2015, the Council of the Day passed a resolution that any applications over 1,000 cubic meters would be subject to a public meeting and public notice. But I noticed that's not in this particular draft. And I recognize maybe 1,000 cubic meters I don't know if that's the right number or not. It's just the number that was put in at the time because the bylaw contains a break at 1,000 cubic meters. But I wondered, perhaps you could help me understand why that direction of council wasn't included in this current draft.
Ms. Hoyt-Fox, could you respond to that?
Yes, yes. So we did receive some feedback from our solicitor that's working on this draft. And he indicated that he is looking for some feedback from both council and staff on how that public engagement or notification process has worked in the past since it was adopted. So try to get some feedback on if it was a meaningful process with the applications, and then getting some further direction from council on how to proceed if including that in this version of the bylaw.
Okay, that makes sense. And perhaps that can relate to the size of the application that would be subject to that, maybe help address if there's some concerns about the efficacy or benefit associated with a public meeting and public notice. Maybe it's looking at a different size would address those concerns, but that'll come up, I guess, through the next draft. I guess overall, well, there's several sections of the bylaw that I think could certainly benefit from some improvement. I think there are, for me, at least 3 critical ones that I would want to see addressed before we put this bylaw back into place in whole, or in effect, without the upper limits as is being proposed. Primarily, the one would relate to bringing the application requirements and tracking requirements of the project in line with the new Ontario Regulation 40619. I think it's important that the information that an applicant needs to provide when they make their application and the information that's collected at the receiving site is consistent with provincial regulations, so that it's not only understandable by staff and the applicant and the operator, but it's enforceable and then defendable. And I think that needs to be fixed before we put this thing back into place. I think the second piece would be the importance of getting securities for these operations. The current wording, section 4, suggests that securities need to be provided in accordance with Schedule C. But if we look at Schedule C, it only requires that securities are provided for those that are projects that are subject to Section 9 of the bylaw, which in effect means that the smaller projects aren't required to provide any securities at all. And I don't think that's the intent. And at the same time, Section 9 doesn't require the securities provided under Section 9 to be provided in compliance with Schedule C, which is where all the details are regarding the provision of security. So I think we need to make sure that if we're going to get securities, they're done, that the bylaw is clearly worded so that we can get those with assuredness. I guess the last piece that I think needs to be addressed relates to the definition of clean fill in the bylaw. The new version has an add-on related to, it's not just Ontario Regulation and Table 1 standards, it's also included or at the discretion of the designated official related to Ontario Regulation 40619. That suggests a highly variable definition. And I don't think a highly variable definition that could change from one week to the next, from person to person, is a good way to structure a definition in a bylaw. I think we need to just, if there's a piece of that regulation, the new regulation that we want to apply to our definition of clean fill, I think we need to clearly specify that so that the applicant knows when they fill out the paperwork that definition is the same when they submit their paperwork, and it's the same when they are operating their site. So I guess those would be the 3 things that I see as being critical to getting it in place. I have many others that I will submit as suggested that I think would make improvements, but those are the 3 critical ones for now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Goyda?
Thank you. I'm happy to submit my comments in writing. I do have I do have some comments in there, and they are mostly centered around my concern for how this all plays out for those wanting to complete small projects as opposed to the large fill operations. I'm happy to put those in writing. But I think it would be beneficial for all the comments to be circulated to all of council in advance so that we all have time to absorb. Councillor Balmer has just brought up some fantastic points that perhaps I haven't thought of, and I'd like some time to be able to absorb that, research it, and put some thoughts together on that in advance.
Thank you. Councillor Suppose?
Yes, I have a question for the CEO. Public meeting, when do you anticipate going to the public? Like right now, I'm talking about, we're going through reading 1. Are you planning to do it between reading 1 and 2, or between 2 and 3, or after reading 3?
Well, after reading 3, it would be in place. So I would anticipate that we would do it between first and second. That way we could get the comment from the community as well. We could come up with ways to address the comments that have been received, give those to council for your consideration for when we would do second reading of the bylaw to give you, here's the final draft, and if you're okay with that, then we would go to third reading. So I would anticipate we would do the public between first and second reading.
Okay, do you have a time in mind, sometime in January or sometime in December? Because right now, as you know, winter's approaching us, and you would really want to get this all in place, the entire bylaw in place before start of spring type of thing, so that you're ready type of thing.
Correct. Yes, our goal is to, if at all possible, have a completed bylaw in place for the spring. So public consultation process on something like this would I think it would be best to avoid December if we can. Everyone's busy enough through the December and the holiday season. So I would anticipate that we would do the public engagement sometime January, February, somewhere in that range.
So I have two general comments. I really want to make this easy for the resident who wants to do a little bit of fill. For instance, during the winter months, you're going to have, if you got a gravel driveway on a slope, it unravels during the winter. And I don't think something like that requires somebody to go through all this paperwork just to put down a load of gravel, load of 2 gravel. So I would think something of that nature should be considered as exemption. The other issue is equine industry. That's fairly big in this township, and I really want to consider having the something that addresses the farm practices. If you go to a MAFRA, this is a farm practice, you're exempt. Well, there's got to be some way that we can do the likewise for the equine industry, because I see that as unnecessary burden on somebody who's got horses worth millions of dollars. There's no way they're going to bring some contaminated fill in there to bring a racetrack to practice racing on that, or for a exercise facility for their horses. It doesn't make sense. You got $1 million horse, you're not going to risk a few $1,000s to put in substandard material. And I'll provide my comments to the CEO as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Suppose. One thing I'd like to see some clarification on is if the applicant is the tenant or the landowner. I feel that the landowner should always be included on the application once they determine what type of fill needs a permit. I don't want to get into a situation where a tenant can bring in fill onto a property that maybe the actual owner doesn't want to have fill on. So somehow we have to ensure that the registered owner is part of that application process, and I support the comments from the rest of council. All right, so Ms. Whitefox, we read the resolution, is that correct?
Yes, we did.
So we're all in favor of that. Councillor Bailey?
Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out process again. We've discussed the a public meeting. Will we be seeing all of council's comments before the public meeting, or will all the comments get thrown into a big pot and then we have one big long meeting to talk it out?
I would anticipate that, yes, we would compile all of the council comments and see how we can incorporate those into a revised version of the bylaw, get council comfortable with that, and then that's what would be presented for comment through the public process.
We'll have to have a discussion about that, Mr. CEO, because I'm just trying to think process-wise. You were mentioning that the third reading you wanted to be finalized. So in my mind, I think we need to tally the public meeting comments and our comments, which would be circulated for council's review ahead of time, and then that be brought forward in the second reading. That may not make more sense, because the third reading, you're looking at having it approved.
Yes, we could, but keep in mind too, we could bring back another draft for information and not give it second reading yet, just to say that here's the comments we received from council, and if you're comfortable with this, we'll take that forward. We don't have to necessarily give it second reading when you see it next.
I would like to see that. I feel there's a appetite at council that we see that prior to second reading. Then
absolutely, I think it's important so that you're all on the same page and you're fully aware of what we're going to the public with to seek comment on.
Perfect. Okay. Councillor Bailey in favor?
I am, thank you.
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
Councillor Spillis?
In favor.
All right, that's carried. And the next one, Ms. Whitefox.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2021-061 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a financial assistance agreement with 2767374 Ontario Incorporated under the Township of Plus Lynch Community Improvement Plan.
Are you gonna move it for that, Councillor Balmer?
In favor. I'll move it. I'm
Ask for a
sorry.
mover.
I'm, yeah.
Seconder, Councillor Bailey?
Yes,
Okay, all in favor, Councillor Bailey?
in favor.
Councillor Balmer?
I am in favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
Councillor Spillis?
In favor.
I believe next is our closed session. Ms. Whitefox, you have a resolution, please?
That council shall go into closed section under 239 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of adoption and receipt of the previous closed minutes of October 19th, 2021 closed session and November 3rd, 2021 closed session. Confidential report regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, site alteration, and a confidential report regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, property tax assessment.
Thank you. I'm gonna move for that. Councillor Goyda,
Yes.
seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor, Councillor Bailey?
Sure.
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
Sapoulos?
In favor.
That's carried. All right, Ms. Whitefox, you have a resolution to read, please?
The council moves into open session at 3:02 p.m.
You got a mover for that, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Balmer, seconded by Councillor Sapoulos. All in favor, Councillor Bailey?
Favor?
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulos?
In favor.
And the next resolution, please, Ms. Whitefox.
The council receives the adoption and receipt of the previous closed minutes for October 19th, 2021 and November 3rd, 2021 closed session. The confidential report regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose regarding the site alteration. Confidential report regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, property tax assessment, and that staff proceed as directed, and that council for the Township of Puslinch rejects section 358 applications number 5/2021 for the 2018 taxation year, number 6, 2021 for the 2019 taxation year, and number 7, 2021 for the 2020 taxation year, relating to roll number 2301-000-006-11668-0000, known municipally as 3 Kirk Crescent. Legal description is Plan 677, Part Lot 17 and 18, as submitted by Ducharme McLennan and Associates on behalf of Tridem Incorporated.
Thank you so much for that. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Goida, seconded by
Sure.
Councillor Lewis. All in favor, Councillor Bailey?
In favor.
Favor. Oops.
In favor, that's good. Councillor Goida
In favor.
and Councillor Sepoulos.
In favor.
All right, so that's the last one coming out of closed, Ms. White Fox.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right, any business arising from the closed session? Seeing any notice of motion? New business? No. Announcements? Nothing? Okay. Affirmatory bylaw, please.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2021-062 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the Township of Puslinch at its meeting held on the 24th day of November, 2021.
And mover for that, please. Councillor Spillis. Councillor Bailey, second it. All in favor, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
Councillor Spillis.
In favor.
And adjournment, please.
Council hereby adjourns at 3:05 p.m.
Mover, please. Councillor Balmer.
Yes.
Councillor Bailey, second. All in favor, Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
Councillor Balmer.
In favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
Councillor Spillis.
In favor.
We are adjourned. Thank
Good
you.
work, team.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Have a good
Thanks,
day.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.